The story opens with the image of a peaceful town. There, after gaining awareness, Derek followed an old beggar to learn a trade. Though he was only a shabby one-star mage, his bragging was so extreme that he called himself a grand mage wherever he went. But because he needed knowledge to survive, Derek accepted becoming a servant, ignoring the old man's unpleasant temper. The old man at one side was also somewhat astonished to see the scene. Suddenly, Derek's eyes snapped open, the pupils inside having contracted slightly. He clenched his teeth and concentrated all his mana into his hand. That surge of power shot out, forming an arrow that raced straight forward. The arrow plunged into a tree and carved a slash across its trunk. The two of them, master and disciple, silently watched the arrow remain lodged in the tree before them. The old man saw this and was so terrified he broke into a cold sweat. So I served the old man in every way. Derek, though covered in sweat and grime, had a bright look in his eyes and became a one-star mage within a year. A flickering flame appeared beside a simple hut under the silent night sky. The old man was now drunk, holding a bottle and staring up at the sky as he spoke. The noble sons beyond the northern wall of Ebelstein, some even reached 3-star status before their coming-of-age ceremony. Derek sat nearby chewing bread and listening intently as the old man said that this was a realm that lowly blood like yours could spend a lifetime training and still not reach. So don't be conceited, your little tricks will collapse against the 2-star wall. The old man kept harping on bloodline. Derek silently stared at the bread in his hand, while the old man's grating voice insisted that magic was a privilege of bloodline and any struggle was futile. He kept nagging me about the insurmountable wall between nobility and commoners. He hung his head, lost in thought, while the old man beside him slept deeply. Perhaps it was a desire for things the old man himself could not achieve. Derek quietly turned his head and glanced at the old man's back. That night dragged on, and the sky suddenly unleashed a heavy rain. And the next day, returning home, Derek stood silently looking at the corpse of the old man lying on the ground. I saw that he was dead. His expression remained calm as if nothing had happened, showing no hint of grief, bruised all over as if he'd been beaten somewhere. I assumed he'd started trouble and been beat. During the rainy night, Derek toiled, digging spade after spade. Only later did I learn he had dragged the old man's body with all his strength. The man had been beaten to death by the guards. Derek stood in the rain before the old man's makeshift grave, his face a bit sullen. It was said the old man was caught trying to steal a 2-star spellbook from the vault. Derek suddenly squeezed his eyes shut. No one understood why an unambitious old man would do such a thing. No one knew the reason. A system notification board suddenly appeared before Derek. That boastful old man had always prized bloodlines. The notice read, "Basic magic comprehended. Choose a primary magic system. This choice cannot be changed. After all, I wasn't originally from this world." And so 4 years passed. The village retained the same ancient, solemn look it had 4 years before. A woman appeared with a confident posture and expression, Keisha Flameheart. A red banner fluttered. The former mistress of the Viscount Flameheart family had declined. Noble-born and a 3-star mage, many mercenary companies sought to recruit Keisha. Derek recalled the scene when he first met her. She had stayed in Ebelstein, taking commissions from the Beldun Mercenary Company and tutoring me, a boy who joined the mercenaries young and only knew 1-star magic. She taught him many things. I learned a great deal from a 3-star mage like Keisha. Cut to a tavern scene, the Beldun Tears Tavern. Keisha sat opposite Derek instructing him. As a mage, it's natural to want to advance, and Derek, as you know, you have the talent to do it. She told him seriously, but excessive ambition will only slow your progress. Derek calmly nodded and replied, "Yes, I will remember that." Keisha crossed her arms, looked him squarely in the face, and ordered, "Now close your eyes and sense your mana." While Derek focused on feeling his mana, Keisha continued guiding from the side. Calmly sense where the mana arises, how it flows, and imagine you're using it to realize a mental image. She folded her arms, watching Derek across from her concentrate intensely on the mana. Though her face showed no expression, she was slightly surprised inwardly. The boy's innate mana was indeed vast, and perhaps due to much field experience his control was very steady. As Derek focused on sensing the mana, he suddenly opened his eyes wide. Keisha's face betrayed obvious alarm in her eyes. A loud explosion rang out in the tavern. The patrons, hearing the blast, shouted irritably, "What was that? What was that noise? What's going on? Were we attacked? Go outside and check it out." Derek breathed heavily, staring fixedly at his palms, ignoring the commotion outside. A hand suddenly grabbed his and pulled him away. Master Keisha hurried ahead of Derek, and without turning said, "Derek, say nothing, follow me." Everyone stood up, weapons ready, paying no heed to the two of them. What is it? There was clearly an explosion. Search carefully. It must be an explosion. Keisha led Derek into a small, hidden corner. Looking at her tall back ahead, he cautiously called, Master. Keisha half turned to look at him and instructed seriously, Derek, listen carefully to what I say. Derek felt a measure of worry and said, yes. Keisha leaned close to Derek and said seriously, as you know, nobles are very sensitive about their privileges, and magic is the greatest of those privileges. Her gaze fixed on him. Innate power is seen as a gift, but it's limited to the nobility. Among commoners, a few occasionally reach 3-star. Looking straight at the young man, Keisha said solemnly that most of those are people who spend their lives studying magic, whereas what you just used. Then she uttered a sentence that stunned Derek. It's a 3-star chaos school magic called illusory hearing, and thus I became a 2-star mage at 14. The system panel reappeared. Access to 2-star magic unlocked, 2-star spell illusory hearing learned. Derek and Keisha sat silently facing each other in the wagon, and afterward Keisha continued to guide me, teaching all kinds of magic and sometimes telling me about the high society she once belonged to. Keisha now wore a fine outfit standing opposite Derek. A year passed and Keisha departed. 2 mysterious figures appeared. It was said the Elvester Count family had invited her to be their private tutor. The Elvester Count family is guarded by a count who controls Elvester Town. Its power so great that even the Grand Duke in the capital dares not meddle. He silently looked at her, bowed his head and sat in the carriage with Keisha as she received an offer he could not refuse. Through the carriage glass, Keisha gave a sad, slight smile and waved farewell to Derek. Becoming a magic instructor for a noble house of that stature was a great blessing for anyone. And before she left, Keisha gave me a 2-star spellbook as a gift. The system notice reappeared listing learned spells. 1-star mana arrow, 1-star discharge, 2-star fireball, transmutation magic, 1-star light creation, chaos magic, 1-star soundproofing, 2-star illusory hearing, summoning magic, 1-star guiding familiar summon, reconnaissance magic, 1-star directional sense, 2-star true sight. Derek sat alone in the room and slammed the book shut. Another year passed. He left the book abandoned on the bed and strode out of the room. I taught myself 2 more 2-star spells. Derek's face was expressionless and his eyes were sharp as knives at only 16, and I had no intention of stopping there. At the Beldon Tears Tavern, a voice called from inside. So, Derek, it's been a while since we've had a commission. Derek sat alone at the bar opposite Jaden and asked, what commission is it? Jaden cheerfully raised a hand and answered, it's a commission from Grand Duke Duplain. Do you know what that means? With his usual cold expression, Derek glanced at him without emotion. Duplain, that Duplain family? Why would a place like that come to us? At the mention, Jaden suddenly grew excited, his eyes lighting up at money. Hey kid, does that matter now? It's Duplain, the place that spends gold like water. He grabbed Derek by the collar enthusiastically and pulled him close. Kid, if we land this, open a line to Duplain and we'll have capital for business forever. He brushed at the spot on his shirt that had been grabbed and asked, so what do they want us to do? Jaden produced 2 gold coins and said happily, nothing big. They want us to clear some magical beasts on the outskirts of the Grand Duke's territory. Derek sounded doubtful, just that. Jaden hurriedly replied, yes, nobles never go back on their word. He rubbed his chin, thinking it sounded suspicious. Would a family of that size hire mercenaries to exterminate magical beasts? With that in mind, Derek turned and left. I'm not doing it, send someone else. Jaden panicked seeing him go, hey, wait a minute. Derek turned back and coldly left him with, call someone else, uncle. You know I don't take shady jobs. Jaden annoyed, that kid, fine, I'll do it. But they need a mage. They need a mage. Don't you know mages are rare in our company these days? He put a hand on his hip and said loudly that nobody else could do it, so he called you. Derek kept his indifferent face and walked off. Really, have to bring a mage just to catch some magical beasts. Anyway, I don't want to get tangled in trouble. Suddenly he spun and snatched something midair that Jaden had thrown. Jaden leaned on the counter grinning and said, 1 gold coin. This is a deposit, not the full payment. Derek opened his palm and stared at the coin in his hand. The faces of Delon, Katarina, and Azeline suddenly appeared. Jaden hurriedly waved and stammered an explanation. No, sir recruiter, this kid is the real deal. He's the best mage I know. Delon ignored Jaden and immediately turned to order. Let's go. This isn't a mission for children. Katarina suddenly leaned over and whispered something to him. Both of them turned their gazes to the mysterious young woman accompanying them. Derek's face remained emotionless as someone spoke to him. Your name is Derek, right? Talk with us a bit. In a region of majestic wilderness, within Grand Duke Duplain's territory, a monster was felled by a mana arrow. Derek's eyes were now like those of a cold, brutal predator. He decapitated a monster with a single decisive sword strike. Another monster raised an axe from behind, aiming to ambush Derek. He nimbly dodged, causing the monster's swing to miss. Derek coldly grabbed the monster by the throat. He summoned a massive amount of mana to electrocute the creature to death. Throwing the last charred corpse onto the ground, Derek coldly turned and reported, "It's all done, Sir Recruiter." The three stood dumbfounded. Delon crossed his arms and praised, "Not bad." The mysterious girl gave a slight smile as Delon added, "Handled quickly for this many." Night had fallen, and the warm lamps inside the tavern glowed brightly. The Beldun Tears Tavern angrily confronted him. "Are you going to be the noble's hunting dog?" Jaden, about to leap onto the table in anger, hurriedly warned, "Peline, calm down. We have customers." Peline still shouted at Derek angrily, "Even if we're lowly commoners, don't become the noble's lapdog." Jaden, looking at his face flushed with rage, calmly said, "Hasn't Derek told you how much this pays?" Peline ground his teeth. "How much? Enough to make you throw away your pride and crawl through the noble's legs?" Jaden showed no change of expression. "It's not literally crawling through their legs." Then he raised his hand to make a sign, and seeing this, Peline became even more annoyed. "What? 1 silver coin." Jaden just shook his head calmly. Peline's eyes lit up with greed upon realizing the true value of 1 gold coin. He bowed deeply before Jaden and shouted, "Please let me crawl through their legs." Jaden was flustered. "Will you shut up, you brat? I told you don't have to crawl through anyone's legs." The sky outside had now turned completely dark. Peline had fallen asleep on the table, drool covering the surface, when a voice suddenly rang out. "So, how did the commission go?" Derek calmly held his glass of wine and replied, "Nothing special. Killing a few goblins was enough." And Jaden added, "The first impression was a bit bad, but they seem to have plenty of money, don't they?" Derek lowered his eyes, his expression full of deep thought as he said, "That's true, but all 3 of them were lying." Jaden turned around, searching for something as he asked, "Really?" Derek lowered his face to reply, "The envoy from the family. Nobles usually embody 3 traits: youth, physical strength, and diplomacy. They judge others by those, but he didn't have any of them." And as for the woman who claimed to be a dishwashing servant, he recalled the scene where she handed him a towel. Her hands were far too clean for someone doing heavy labor. A voice cut his sentence short. "Derek." Derek looked up at the person who spoke, and Jaden looked at him seriously. "We are mercenaries. There's no need to look too deeply into the commissioner. Just doing the job properly and getting paid is enough." Hearing this, Derek only replied coldly, "Yes." Jaden looked at the 2 kids with gentle eyes. "Uncle Jaden's words are very true. This is the wilderness, and in the wilderness, food and clothing are the most important things. The rest doesn't really matter." The next day, a vast territory appeared, the territory of Grand Duke Duplain. Derek turned, sheathed his sword, and calmly said to everyone, "It's been cleaned up. At this rate, the goblins won't dare to show their faces for quite some time." Delon spoke up in praise. "Well done, you've worked hard." And hearing this, Jaden happily said, "Come now, how about the rest of the payment?" 2 shining gold coins were held high in his hand. Jaden took the 2 gold coins and happily tossed them at Derek's head to his annoyance. "Derek, look at this. 2 gold coins, 2 whole coins. This much means—" Derek was speechless. "Put them down and let's talk." Old man Delon suddenly coughed to regain their attention. Then he frowned, his expression looking somewhat displeased, yet he said, "Derek, I hold your capability in high regard, so I would like to offer you another commission. What do you think?" Both of them heard this and looked up at him in surprise. Delon continued, "The Grand Duke's estate will pay 15 gold coins for this commission." And Jaden was surprised. 15 coins. Delon looked straight at Derek and asked, "Will you take it?" Derek replied seriously, "Yes." The carriage carrying everyone gradually moved away. The carriage finally arrived at its destination. A magnificent palace appeared, the territory of Grand Duke Duplain, the Duplain mansion. Jaden stepped down, looked up, and exclaimed, "Is this the Grand Duke Duplain family? It's truly spectacular." Delon spoke to the 2 of them. "Before we go inside, I would like to introduce myself again." And Jaden happily replied, "Oh, please, we've been meeting all day. Please make yourself at home." Delon looked at them both seriously and introduced, "I am Delon, the chief steward of the Grand Duke Duplain mansion. I apologize, but due to the nature of the work, I was forced to hide my identity." Jaden heard this and couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy. "Oh my, well this is." The woman also spoke up gracefully, "I am Katerina, the head maid of the Grand Duke's mansion." Jaden hurriedly bowed his head to the 2 of them. "Oh my, such important figures. How rude I've been. I am Jaden, leader of the Beldun mercenary group." Derek, standing to the side, said nothing, thinking coldly to himself. Not an envoy, but a chief steward. Not a servant, but a head maid. I suspected they were no small fry, but this is far higher than I imagined. A pair of feet stepped down from the carriage. Both of them turned to look, and Jaden curiously asked, "And who is that?" The mysterious girl had by then removed her hood. Her long hair fluttered in the wind. Derek was a bit stunned at the sight. The mysterious girl smiled brightly at everyone and introduced, "I am Azalina Leaner Duplain. I would like to invite you, Derek, to be the magic teacher for my younger sister, Diella, the eldest daughter of the Duplain family." Derek glanced at her with some anxiety. A magic teacher for the young lady. A large palace with bustling servants appeared. The Duplain Duke mansion. The room door was suddenly burst open from the outside. A figure walked in aggressively, talking as he moved. "Father, Brother Valerian, please look at this." Duplain was reviewing documents when he looked up, looking unhappily at his son. "Raig, what on earth are you doing? Please behave in a manner befitting your status." Raig stood beside a crying maid and said loudly, "The one who needs to maintain their status isn't me, it's Diella. Time after time, she has laid hands on my servants." The maid's face was covered in tears. Valerian turned his head uncomfortably to look at his younger brother. "Lower your voice. Father and I are talking." Raig continued to accuse them angrily. "Last month, over 10 servants quit. Every few days she breaks things." He stepped in front of Duplain and angrily slammed his hand onto the table. "When will you finally severely punish that rebellious child?" Valerian was by then extremely angry at his younger brother's attitude and stood up to shout, "Raig." He furrowed his brows, his tone carrying pressure. "That's enough, stop and get out." Raig said nothing, only darkening his face as he turned to look at his older brother. The figures of 2 girls suddenly appeared. "Father, even if Diella is rebellious, we still have Azaline, don't we?" Raig's face darkened as he frowned, sharing his own opinion. "I think we should just let Diella go." Duplain reached up to remove his glasses and calmly replied, "That is none of your concern." Raig said angrily, "I've already asked the butler to look into a few convents. They have good facilities and are frequented by many nobles. It would be better to let her serve God than to live as an eyesore to others, wouldn't it? If this continues, it's just going to bring disaster upon us." Upon hearing this, Duplain's face turned grim as he grabbed his son by the head. He then firmly slammed his son's face down onto the table. Duplain's voice carried an indescribable fury, and with eyes as cold as blades, he said, "I told you that is none of your concern." Despite the heavy blow to his head, Raig gritted his teeth, refusing to back down. "It is time for you to be decisive, father." Duplain's gaze, fixed on his son, held a flicker of dissatisfaction. Azaline happily led the way for Derek. Suddenly, she turned her head to ask him, "My younger sister, Diella, have you ever heard of her?" Hearing this, Derek tried to search his memory before replying, "Young Diella, I have seen the name in the Duplain family register." Hearing this, Azaline bowed her head in sadness and helplessness, saying, "Yes, that's right. Perhaps there are few people in the world who even know she exists." The door to the room opened once again. Seeing the 2 men in front of her, Azaline hurried to speak up. Valerian looked at her gently and said, "It's been a long time, hasn't it? Are things well in Ebelstein?" She nodded lightly and replied, "Yes, thanks to your concern, I am living quite comfortably." Valerian tried to push the uncomfortable-looking Raig away quickly while awkwardly waving at the other 2, saying, "Is that so? Well, as you can see, Raig has a minor injury, so let's chat another time." Azaline responded softly, "Yes, brother." Derek's gaze was sharp and cold as he watched the 2 men. Raig and Valerian walked away with an air of nonchalance. Derek's gaze flickered toward another direction. Over there, a maid was burying her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Seeing this, Derek remained silent, his expression unreadable. The 2 of them, Azaline and Derek, sat seriously in the study. Duplain spoke calmly, "That's good. As long as you are living well in Ebelstein, that is all that matters." Azaline looked directly at him and flashed a bright smile. "Yes, thanks to your thoughtful arrangements. This is the magic tutor from Ebelstein. He has agreed to teach Diella." Duplain's eyes remained glued to a pile of documents as he replied, "Very well." Azaline and Derek stood up. She smiled at Duplain and said, "Then, if you'll excuse us, we will take our leave." Just as the 2 were turning to leave, Duplain calmly commanded, "Wait, you stay." Hearing this, Derek simply turned his head to look at him with a calm expression. Sunlight from outside filtered into the gloomy room through a crack in the door. The documents were still being written on incessantly. As Duplain reviewed the documents, he asked Derek, "You look quite young, are you 16? Derek looked at him and politely replied, "Yes." He asked further, "How much magic are you capable of using?" Derek answered honestly, "I can use a bit of first-tier magic." Duplain reached up and took off his glasses. He looked straight at Derek and said seriously, "Don't be overly modest. Humility is not always a virtue." Derek said nothing, just silently looking at Duplain. In Derek's eyes, The Duke of Duplain was now radiating a terrifying aura. The Duke's politeness was indeed useless against a fifth-tier mage. Derek lowered his head and said to him, "If I was disrespectful, I apologize." Duplain heard this and replied, "It's fine. I understand why you have to hide your skills. Excessive talent sometimes consumes its own master." He reached up to adjust his glasses as if observing his age and attire, adding, "You don't look like a magic tutor at all." Derek nodded seriously. "I am a mercenary." Duplain looked at him and said, "Azaline chose you, so I have no objections. I have given you permission to enter and leave Diela's villa." He stood up and added, "A maid will show you the way. I am leaving now." Hearing this, Derek spoke up in a hurry. "May I ask one thing?" Duplain calmly agreed. "Go ahead." Upon hearing his consent, Derek said, "Sir, I am a mercenary. Once a job is accepted, it must be seen through to the end. Azaline has hired me." He looked at the Duke and added, "To teach Diela magic and help her integrate into aristocratic society." Duplain frowned in annoyance. "Why state the obvious?" Derek looked him straight in the eyes. "Therefore, I would like to ask your permission for one thing." Duplain looked at him, full of curiosity. A plate came flying through the air, cutting through the wind. It slammed into the wall and shattered, causing the maid nearby to scream in terror. She hurried to bow low, trembling as she pleaded, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, my lady." The person opposite her spoke arrogantly. "Sorry? Do you think an apology from someone like you has any value?" She then suddenly barked an order that turned the maid pale. "Get out of my sight immediately. If you dare to show your face again, I'll throw this right at your pathetic face." A cup of steaming hot tea appeared, but why was it Derek? Jaden sat opposite Azaline and asked with concern, "The Duplain family should have piles of magic tutors, shouldn't they? Furthermore, it's not easy for a commoner to teach magic to a noble." She lowered her head and replied, "Almost all the famous mages on the continent have been invited over, but everyone has given up. I became so desperate that I felt anyone who knew even a little bit of magic would suffice." Azaline then looked up at Jaden and said, "Derek was originally a mercenary, but he is well versed in noble culture." Jaden looked at her and replied, "Perhaps it is because his mentor was once a noble who taught him everything." Azaline seemed to suddenly wake up. "Is that so? Compared to an ordinary mercenary, he does have a certain air about him. I think Derek might be able to mold Diela." Jaden suddenly remarked, "Lady Azaline, you need to learn how to judge people better." Azaline was shocked. "What do you mean?" He looked straight at her with a serious expression and said, "Derek is a street mage who has been a mercenary since he was a child. Do you really think someone of that sort could survive on air and kindness alone?" Azaline was taken aback but remained silent. Derek was led away by a maid, standing alone before a large, grand door. Derek's hand suddenly reached into the air. He raised his hand and knocked lightly on the door. Derek looked at the door before him and said nothing. He reached out and turned the doorknob. Pushing the door open, Derek said calmly, "Hello." Looking at the lonely figure of the young lady before him, he said cautiously, "I am Derek, if you'll excuse me." The young lady simply ordered in a low voice, "Come here. Diela Catherine Duplain, a child of the Duplain house." Derek slowly stepped closer to the young lady. Her mouth suddenly curled into a smirk. A cup of water was splashed precisely into his face. Derek's face was now drenched in tea. Diela stood there arrogantly and taunted. "Oh my, what to do? I thought some sewer rat had crawled into the house." She approached him with interest, her tone filled with mockery. "Aren't you the mercenary the butler mentioned? Or if I look closely, are you actually a rat?" One of her hands rested on the chair. One of her feet followed suit, propping itself up as well. Diela picked up a bucket of dirty water and, standing on the chair, poured it all over Derek's head. "Well, does the smell of sewer water remind you of home? That stench-ridden outfit really suits you." Diela stood on the chair and said in a voice filled with mock regret, "We're out of water. What a shame." Derek said nothing, just looked up and gave her a cold, icy glare. Diela frowned, irritated. She kicked him straight in the chest in anger. "How dare you look at me like that?" Derek was kicked backward into a sitting position. Diela stood with her hands on her hips, looking down at his disheveled state. She suddenly raised her hand to take off her shoe. "Damn it." Diela held the shoe high and pinched her nose in disgust. "That foul, filthy stench." She then threw the shoe hard at Derek. Diela sat down gracefully in the chair next to him. She looked down at him haughtily and said, "Hey, sewer rat, know your place. You dare to lecture me? Did the streets not teach you basic etiquette?" On a desk in the study, Duplain was quietly watching the scene outside the window. His face was filled with contemplation. He remembered the conversation earlier when Derek said, "My presence here means that Lady Diela's problems are not easily solved. So I would like to ask you, who is it that truly loves Diela?" He cast a cold, sharp glance at him. "What methods does your excellency allow me to use to teach the young lady?" He heard this and pondered without answering. A sharp slap suddenly landed on Diela's face. leaving it flushed red and leaving her stunned. Derek shook his wrist, while Diella remained stunned from the slap. She looked up in terror at the fierce figure standing before her. Then stunned, she reached up to touch her slapped cheek, saying nothing. Derek's eyes were full of murderous intent as he looked at Diella. Wake up. 3 years ago, Derek and Keisha were sitting comfortably in a carriage. Derek wiped his sword and said, "Sir, if you had to teach an arrogant and ungrateful apprentice, what would you do?" Keisha rested her chin on her hand and said, "I suppose I would try to understand, tolerate, and accept them." He was slightly displeased upon hearing this. Wouldn't that be too idealistic? What if even that is impossible with that apprentice? Keisha explained, "The essence of education is to lead the apprentice to a better path, Derek. If you cannot communicate through understanding and tolerance, you must find a starting point." Derek asked, "What is a starting point?" Keisha's face darkened as she cast a glance at him, engrave fear into them. Diella, having been slapped, held her face in bewilderment. Derek crossed his arms and looked at her, saying, "Treat others with care and respect. I will not repeat this a second time. Wake up." Diella pushed herself up with her hands. She slapped him hard in the face. Diella gave him a sour look. Something like, "You, how dare you, you dare." Another slap landed cruelly on her face. Derek's face was grim as he glared at Diella. "I will not repeat this a second time. When treating others, one must show care and respect." Diella's expression gradually became manic. She stood up abruptly and screamed, "Butler, what are you all doing? This bastard just hit your Lady Diella." Hearing Diella's scream, Delon and the servants rushed in a panic. "Lady Diella, are you all right?" He walked up to Derek and scolded him loudly. "What do you think you're doing? You dare lay a hand on the young lady if the Grand Duke hears of this." He said nothing, simply pulling a scroll of parchment from inside his jacket. Raising the letter high in his hand, Derek said in a cold voice, "Grand Duke Duplain has authorized me with full authority to educate Lady Diella. No matter what methods I use, please remember that this is something he has permitted." Delon picked up the paper and took out his glasses to examine it. Diella watched nervously as he read. Darkness completely covered the sky above the castle. Raig grabbed Valerian's arm and said urgently, "Brother, please calm down." Valerian angrily pushed open the door in front of him and roared, "Are you that mercenary?" Derek just looked up, glaring coldly at him. Valerian angrily grabbed Derek by the collar, intent on hitting him. "You dare hit Diella?" Raig hurried to intervene. "Brother, put that down and let's talk about it." Derek just stared back coldly. "This is something His Highness has permitted." Raig hurried to stand between them. "Brother, this is a guest invited by Azaline. If you do this, it will put Azaline in a difficult position. Father has already agreed to it." He turned and walked away angrily. "You, follow me." "Raig, don't you dare get in my way. Mind your own business." Raig gave a conciliatory smile and placed a hand on Derek's shoulder. "I've heard about it. Diella needs a good beating to wake up. Don't worry, he won't go too far." Derek turned his head to look at Raig. Watching the figures of the two men leaving the room, he lamented, "Why bother clinging to such a useless child?" The door creaked open, illuminating part of the doll-like girl's face. Valerian opened the door and said to him, "Come in." He walked and explained, "This is the room Diella used when she was at the main residence. Now it's left empty like this." Derek's gaze fell upon a painting in the room. Valerian's expression softened as he looked at the painting. Diella loved to paint. Every time she showed off her work, she would blush, and it was so cute. Looking at the painting, he added, "But she rarely finished anything. She usually only painted the parts she liked and then quit halfway through." Valerian suddenly said, "I'm sorry I was too emotional earlier. My apologies." Derek turned to look at him and replied, "It's fine, sir, don't worry about it." Looking around the room full of paintings, he asked curiously, "But why bring me to this room?" Valerian replied sadly, "I wanted to show you that Diella wasn't a child who deserved to be abandoned or beaten. But from some point on, she became overly obsessed with her noble bloodline." Derek listened silently as he spoke, and then she was eventually kicked out of the main residence and confined to the villa. "I can't understand what turned her into this." He reached up and picked a book from the shelf. "I must prevent Diella from going to the convent at all costs. As long as she can learn even a first-tier spell, I can persuade Father." Valerian suddenly grabbed Derek by both shoulders. "So please save Diella." He firmly shrugged Valerian's hands off. "Hold on." Derek flipped through a few pages of the book. So she hadn't completely given up on magic. Look at these notes scribbled all over the book. He turned to ask Valerian, "The others are probably all theoretical rules, right?" He replied, "Yes, nobles usually learn the rules after all." Derek pondered thoughtfully. A beautiful painting was hung on the wall. Derek shut the book in his hand firmly. He handed the book to Valerian and said, "I'll give it a try." The beautiful night sky appeared through the window. Diella was fast asleep in her soft bed. A bucket of water suddenly splashed down. Diella, drenched, panicked, and screamed. Derek looked at her coldly and said, "Are you sleepy now?" Diella gritted her teeth and sat up. "Are you crazy?" He didn't answer, simply pulling her along by the arm. "Please follow me. There is somewhere you need to be." To which Diella screamed angrily, "Hey, let go. How dare you touch me? Have you truly gone mad?" Derek dragged her down the corridor, ignoring her frantic screaming. "It hurts. Let go, I'm not going anywhere. What are you all doing? Stop this bastard at once." The cool moonlight shone down from above. Derek said nothing, continuing to drag Diella straight out of the palace. Then he coldly shoved her down onto the ground. Diella gritted her teeth and cursed. "What is this supposed to change? Wake up, you lowly wretch. How dare you lecture me?" Derek suddenly spoke, leaving Diella stunned. "You won't listen, will you? Then let me tell you an interesting story." He wore an eerie smile as he said, "The truth is, I never had any intention of teaching Diella any magic. I just enjoy beating up arrogant nobles." Hearing this, Diella's face went pale and she stammered, "What?" Derek acted as if it were common sense. "Isn't it logical? Why would a lowly commoner like me care about nobles? The tutor job and all these moral lessons are just fancy excuses," causing Diella to tremble. "What are you talking about?" He then stood face to face with her and grinned deviously. "I just needed an excuse to punch the arrogant faces of stuck-up nobles like you." Derek drew his sword and said, "Do you know how wonderful the screams of those noble folks sound?" Diella trembled and threatened, "Do you think you'll be safe after doing this?" He held his sword high and gave an evil laugh. "Of course, you're about to be locked in a convent anyway. Who would believe the word of someone like you?" Diella's complexion grew increasingly pale. "If something big happens, I'll just offer my own life to pay for it. The life of a wretch is only worth that much, isn't it?" The sword in Derek's hand reflected Diella's terrified face. "Or, if I just run away, no one will remember me either. Consider it a favor to the Duplain house by removing a thorn in their side. If I get caught by him, I'm dead for sure," she thought, standing still as she watched his silhouette fade into the distance. "If I run across the meadow to the mansion, I'll be caught immediately," she realized. Diella's face was slashed, but she didn't dare to stop. "I have to blend into the forest. I know the paths in there well. If I escape, I can make it back to the mansion," she thought, leaping over a tree root. At that point, it'll be him who's dead, not me. Diella was stunned when she glanced behind her. An immensely large fireball appeared. Derek held his hand high, controlling the fireball. Diella turned back, gritting her teeth as she thought, a fireball. Seeing the massive fireball in Derek's hand, she was stunned. That's a second-tier spell. How is he able to use second-tier magic? Derek smirked slightly. Another fireball tore through the wind and lunged toward her. Diella was so frightened she could only stare in shock. She hurriedly ducked to dodge it. Where the fireball landed, a massive explosion erupted. Diella was so terrified her eyes widened, and beads of cold sweat streamed down her face. Derek grinned, his voice dripping with mock regret. "Missed." The full moon draped a pale yellow cloak over the silent night. The sound of the woman's running tore through the quiet space. Diella ran frantically for her life, as if terrified by something lurking behind her. Because she was paying too much attention to what was behind her, she accidentally tripped over a dry branch. Diella shielded herself as she hit the cold ground. "Luckily, my face is still fine." She suppressed the pain and forced herself to stand up. Suddenly, a barrage of arrows flew toward her. Diella caught sight of those sharp arrows with a quick glance. She nimbly retreated, and the arrows pinned themselves into the ground just where she had been. Luckily, they didn't hit her. Diella hesitated and collapsed to her knees, watching everything unfold before her eyes. Derek approached and praised her. "You move quite well. It's hard to believe that someone who spends all day cooped up in the villa is capable of this." She gritted her teeth, her eyes filled with resentment as she looked up at him. Immediately after, without waiting for him to react, Diella scrambled to run forward. Derek pursed his lips at her cold attitude. Things weren't much better on her end. Her strength was starting to fade, but she reminded herself, how long do I have to keep running? Can I actually escape? If I keep going like this, I'm definitely going to get caught. She hadn't run very far before Diella was distracted by something behind her. He was crouching down to cast a spell, and a deep puddle of water had appeared on the ground. Derek looked up, and everything returned to its original state. His heart surged. That's right. This is the forest from the painting. It must be the place where she played as a child. Derek remembered seeing this image in a painting and guessed. In the embrace of nature, she unconsciously felt the flow of mana and transformed it into brushstrokes. As he was lost in thought, a sound from behind broke his trance. This must be. When had Diella returned? She was holding a heavy rock, aiming it at his head. Derek wasn't about to be outdone, and drew the sword from his waist. He nimbly knocked the rock away, causing her to fall. Diella gritted her teeth as her attempt was exposed. He looked at her coldly, his eyes flashing red. "I admire your spirit. Knowing it wasn't easy to escape the pursuit, you turned back to attack. That was a difficult decision to make. Diella wanted to stand up and run, but she couldn't. It seemed as if something was pulling her back. Derek smirked and reminded her, "You don't have the strength to run anymore." He raised his sword, granting Diella a favor. "Do you have any final words?" She seemed to have accepted the truth and let out a laugh. He asked with a hint of sadness, "Why are you so obsessed with noble blood?" Upon hearing that question, her heart tightened. Diella's face was filled with bitterness for herself. "If I don't have that, what am I? Without this noble blood, I am completely empty." She clenched her fists and punched the cold ground in disgust. Magic, magic, magic. When she looked up at him, Diella's eyes were brimming with tears. "Do you think I haven't tried? What am I supposed to do if I try until I die and still fail?" Derek was momentarily silenced. She knelt down, venting her rage on the cold ground. "If magic and art are both rejected, if I become a failure." Diella's eyes narrowed with hatred. "Then what do I have left besides this blood? If I lose this, I will." Her voice rang out like a challenge. "What will I become?" Derek pressed his lips together, unable to give her an answer. The sword in his hand glowed once more. Diella didn't notice, as her eyes were now filled only with tears. Under the brilliant moonlight, Derek raised his sword and nodded. "I have heard you clearly." With watery eyes, he said his farewell goodbye. In a flash, fragments of dim light swept Derek's figure away into the distance. Diella fearfully bowed her head and squeezed her eyes shut. She bit her lip as if accepting her fate, then slowly cracked her eyes open to gaze at the world. Between shards of sharp ice, a sword stood proud, having pierced through them. Diella looked around blankly, as if she couldn't comprehend everything. It was him. He was still here, creating a barrier around the spot where she sat. Diella looked in confusion at her hand, which was trembling while emitting a faint, pale radiance magic. Seeing that everything was settled, he tucked his sword neatly back at his waist. Derek bowed earnestly. "You have been through a lot, miss. Please forgive my rudeness." Diella had stopped crying and looked up at him with hopeful eyes. Seeing her expression, Derek explained, "Although this is only a manifestation of mana and doesn't deserve to be called magic, you did well." Diella was once again driven to a rage by him. The long-suppressed emotions finally found a release, causing her to sob loudly. One large, one small, a cry that made the dark night feel vibrant. The moon remained hidden behind the clouds, silently witnessing it all. Derek helped her up to sit on a tree trunk and explained, "This is the Wild School." Diella wondered, the Wild School. As he bandaged the wound on her leg, he explained the confusion. "Yes, most nobles follow the discipline school. All schools are essentially the same, but the process of cultivation differs greatly." She listened seriously to his explanation. "Miss Diella belongs to the Wild School but was forced to study the theory of the discipline school, which is why the problems arose. It's not that the clothes don't fit. It's that you're trying to squeeze yourself into a tight suit." Finding his words very credible, Diella questioned, "How do you know? How did you realize I belong to the Wild School?" "I've seen your paintings, miss. You sense the mana floating in nature and sketch it onto the canvas." He kept his head down, focused on his work, not paying much attention to her gaze. "Innate mages of the Wild School usually have sensed mana in nature since they were small." Diella's mood had softened, and she was no longer a crybaby. After being certain, Derek straightened her clothes so she could stand up. "All right, you can walk now." Diella felt more reassured. "Not bad, this is." Derek moved forward a few steps. "Even though you've released mana, there is still a long way to go. Tomorrow I will teach you how to apply it naturally." It was only when he wanted to leave that she dared to speak up. Because Derek was so shy, Diella decided to turn her face away with feigned indifference. "Thank you." He didn't refuse, nor did he offer any further response. Finally, he called out to her, "Let's go." Diella happily approached, coming. They chatted together under the moonlight, one asking and one answering in perfect harmony. "By the way, did you draw that sunset painting yourself?" "I don't remember. It's been a long time since I held a brush." "It's a perfect work. It's my lifelong masterpiece. You were the first to recognize its value." The next day, the brilliant sun shone through the window frame. Diella looked blankly at the mana present in her hands. Those streams of light glimmered with magic. Her eyes were filled with focus, devoting all her attention to it. Suddenly, what appeared were screens of gray-black smoke, making Diella anxious. This isn't good. Outside, the maids were passing by her door. Suddenly, Diella threw the door open, startling the maid. The bucket of water in her hand wobbled. Water splashed everywhere by inertia, soaking her dress. The maid was flustered. "I'm sorry, Miss Diella, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Diella cast a murderous look at her. She hurriedly knelt and kowtowed, begging for mercy. "I deserve to die. Please forgive me just this once." Instead, she just calmly instructed, "Be careful." That left the maid confused. "What? Why didn't she hit me?" She just said that and left. Other servants saw this and crowded around to help, whispering, "Are you okay? Did she hit you?" "No, the miss just said that." She went out last night. What could have happened? Over here, inside the room, Derek was still fast asleep. Diella frantically pounded on the door. Derek, Derek. Derek opened the door with sleepy eyes. What is it? The butler arrived to calm her down. Miss, you should keep your manners. Doing this is not right. Diella ignored him and said to Derek, teach me how to control the mana that just awakened. I tried it myself, but it didn't work. Hearing this, the butler was panicked. She has already awakened mana. Seeing that Derek didn't answer, she urged, you promised to teach me today. Hurry up. He suddenly slammed the door shut, leaving only one sentence. Please come back in the afternoon. Diella just smiled, not at all angry, which made the butler weep with joy. Finally, the miss has. Sure enough, her temper couldn't be helped. The next second, she was pounding on the door again. Hey, who do you think you are to order me around? Open the door. I told you to wake up right now. The pounding continued outside, but he nonchalantly ignored it and went back to sleep. Hey, open the door, Diella said angrily. You crazy fool. Scene change. At the palace early the next morning. Reg slowly walked down the hallway. Two maids cleaning nearby looked at each other and whispered, have you heard the news? Miss Diella hasn't broken a single plate for days. The other maid nodded and said, that's right, I spilled water this morning and wasn't scolded at all. The blonde maid covered her mouth and whispered, it's not that, I heard Miss Diella has awakened mana. The other one exclaimed in surprise, oh my, really? Right at that moment, Reg walked by. He stopped. Reg turned his head, his cold eyes glancing at them. What were you just saying? Scene change. Inside the study, the sound of a pen scratching could be heard. Duplain hesitated. Diella has awakened mana. Valerian looked at him and replied, yes, father. I've confirmed it with the butler and the servants many times. He didn't show much expression, just replied softly, how fortunate. Reg looked at him now, his expression somewhat serious. Don't be so quick to celebrate just because she awakened mana, father. Hearing that tone, Valerian couldn't help but shout, hey, your sister has awakened mana. Instead of praising her, you're still. Duplain frowned slightly. Reg ignored his brother and continued to look at his father. Father, do you remember how much trouble she caused? Are you going to ignore the plan to send her to the convent just because of a small achievement? He lowered his eyes, appearing thoughtful and not answering. Scene change. The weather today seems very nice. Diella sat on the bed, puffing out her cheeks. Derek stood with his hands on his hips, looking at her. Are you kidding me? Diella turned her back to him, her tone sulky. I'm not kidding, I'm angry. Derek rubbed his head in distress. No matter how angry she was, it was useless. Diella immediately retorted, I'm not sulking, I'm angry. He lowered his eyes to advise her. Sulking like that doesn't solve anything. Everything has its own order. Finally, she couldn't help it and raised her fist. I'm not sulking, I'm angry. Derek stopped. He pressed his lips together in thought. Diella was the one who couldn't help herself and turned around first. She hesitated. Consider it sulking then. Derek stepped forward and pulled the chair out. He sat down and looked at Diella with emotionless eyes. Awakening mana doesn't mean you have the right to be aggressive. Otherwise, you'll be exhausted immediately. I say this from personal experience. Studies are important, but so is rest. You've rested enough, now it's time to study. She pouted, her tone sarcastic. Yes, yes, the teacher is always right. The old-fashioned magic teacher has arrived. Yes, yes. Derek's eyes suddenly turned somber. He looked at her and said in a cold voice, then do you want me to teach you in a way that isn't old-fashioned? Unpleasant images of him surfaced in Diella's memory. Derek began the lesson. He looked at his hand and said, today we will practice controlling mana. Once you master this ability, miss, you can quickly become proficient in first-tier magic. The wild school isn't bound by the system, making it very suitable for self-study. It values freedom much more than the discipline school. To be honest, you are very well suited for the wild school, miss. Hearing his praise, Diella stammered. What are you talking about? Derek looked at her and said seriously, just as I said. Your free-spirited personality goes well with the wild school, and besides, with your noble blood, miss, you have plenty of talent. One of her ears pricked up to hear every word. Diella blushed slightly and hesitated. I have talent. He lowered his eyes and replied, yes, awakening mana to create an ice wall is clearly an innate talent. She played with her fingers, pretending to ask casually, so am I a genius? Derek immediately rebutted, talent and genius are two different things. Diella pouted, they're almost the same. He said again, no, completely different. Diella gave up arguing and sighed, oh my, fine, you win. Reg was standing outside the room at this time, hearing the entire conversation. He gritted his teeth and let out a cold snort. Time slowly passed in the palace. Diella burst through the door, excitedly saying, Derek, I've awakened mana, but I can't control it. A few days later, she ran to him to show off again. Derek, look at this. I can use frost, but it feels weird. Time continued to pass, and Diella chased him down the hall, shouting, Derek, I can feel the mana. but this thing is really hard to understand. Another afternoon under the tree. Derek, what are you doing here? Diella stood with her hands on her hips and questioned him. You should be staying closer to the auxiliary villa, shouldn't you? Derek answered indifferently. Do you think I lent you that magic book so you could actually learn from it? Well, of course it was for learning. Diella didn't waste any words, directly grabbing his wrist and pulling him along. Hey, what do I do now? Just like you said last time, I've successfully released my magical energy. Hurry up and check it for me. Inside Valerian's study, the door swung open. Derek walked in and asked, You called for me, sir? Valerian nodded, gesturing for him to approach. You've arrived, sit down and let's talk. He didn't beat around the bush and directly asked, How has Diella been lately? Derek lowered his eyes and replied coolly, She has made significant progress, but it will still take more time for her to master first-tier magic. Valerian nodded. I understand. Mother will likely return next week after the social gathering. He added a warning. I should let you know in advance. She isn't exactly easygoing. Everyone in the residence is fine for now, but in general, the nobility doesn't care for commoners holding such important positions. Do you understand? Derek looked straight into Valerian's eyes and replied, I will keep that in mind. Did you call me here just to tell me this? He suddenly pursed his lips and fell silent. Valerian stood up, walked to the window, and said slowly, I am the heir to the Duplain family. The position of head of the family means I must be tolerant and protective of every member of the clan. To achieve that, one must treat everyone with sincerity. But how difficult that is. The human heart is deep and complex. I wish everyone shared the same thoughts and values, but the reality is not so. Derek looked at his back and asked bluntly, Then, what is it that you want to say? Valerian's fists tightened. Just as he turned back around, tears welled up in his eyes. Diella won't play with me anymore, Derek. Derek's face darkened as he cast a glance at Valerian. He began to lament. When she was little, she would always laugh and play with me. That image is still etched in my heart. Is there any other angelic child like her in this world? So, Derek, do you have any ideas? Any way to win back Diella's affection? Derek slowly took a sip of tea and asked, Why are you asking me about this? Without a moment's hesitation, Valerian replied, Diella only hangs around you after all. No sooner had he finished speaking than Diella's voice rang out. Derek, where are you? Valerian suddenly pulled something out and held it up in front of Derek. It's nothing, look at this. I learned how to make dolls from the maids. In his hand was an absolutely hideous doll. Valerian boasted proudly, See, doesn't it look exactly like Diella? Can you feel this brother's love yet? Derek looked at him with a dark expression and said bluntly, Are you trying to curse her? Valerian pursed his lips, tears welling up again. Derek, you really don't understand anything about these sorts of things. Time passed, and on a fine day at the palace, that woman had arrived. She looked at Derek and said, I have heard a lot about you. They said they had found an incredibly talented magic tutor. It is a pleasure to meet you. I am Miriella Dable Duplain. If you don't mind, I would like to send some gifts to your territory. He answered directly without a hint of hesitation. I don't belong to any noble house. She was slightly stunned. He continued, I am a commoner. Miriella's eyes widened in shock. A commoner. Time shifted back to a week ago. Azeline bowed her head and said to Derek, I feel very fortunate to have brought you to the residence. She smiled, her eyes crinkling. I want to be by Diella's side, but since I have many matters to resolve in Ebelstein, I will leave her in your hands, okay? Derek didn't look up and replied, Yes, I understand. Jaden patted him on the shoulder from behind. Derek, our young lady has trustingly entrusted her to you. Is that all you have to say? The two of them got into a carriage, looking out toward him. Jaden smiled and reminded him, Finish your business quickly and return. If Belden finds out, he'll fly into a rage again. Azeline also chuckled. I'm counting on you, Derek. The carriage slowly rolled away into the distance. Azeline suddenly remembered something and covered her mouth in panic. Oh my, I almost forgot. Jaden quickly answered, Yes, what were you going to say, my lady? She looked back through the window. My mother is returning next week, and I forgot to mention it to Derek. He looked at her full of confusion. Is that something that needs to be mentioned? Azeline hesitated. Well, it's just... She thought to herself, my mother is a bit. The scene shifted to the front of a room, and the door was pushed wide open. A woman in a blue dress entered. Azeline thought to herself, it's hard to describe. She's like a god of destruction. Miriella angrily slammed her hand onto the desk in Duplain's office. A commoner acting as a tutor? What is this all about? Facing her fury, Duplain coolly interrupted. My ears work just fine. Why don't you lower your voice? Miriella remained furious. Now is not the time to discuss that. It's Diella, our beloved youngest daughter. Facing her outburst, he slowly removed his glasses. Miriella, you know how it is. I'm not very fond of hearing commoners. Duplain explained reluctantly, but all the prestigious magic teachers have already given up. Muriella braced both hands on the table, gritting her teeth in anger. Regardless, how could you bring in a mercenary like that? He added, finding a good magic tutor isn't easy. Besides, Derek was recommended by Azaline. Muriella covered her forehead and turned around. No, sir. In any case, there should at least be a minimum standard. She turned to look at Duplain and suggested, That's right, you could have brought my younger brother, Flam, instead. He was busy last time, but things are different now. Diella has awakened her magical energy and Flam could teach her. There was no expression on his face as he replied, Bringing a garrison commander back to act as a tutor. Is that how the territory is supposed to be run so haphazardly? Being spoken to in such a way, Muriella shouted angrily, What about the Ebelstein nobility? Are they running things haphazardly too? That's a battlefield, you know. She pointed an angry finger. Among the nobility, a teacher is the most important calling card. And yet you've hired a nameless commoner. Do you want Diella to become a laughingstock when she enters high society? The door was pushed open by someone. Valerian entered and urged, Mother, please calm down. You didn't come here to argue with Father, did you? Muriella turned her head and said to him in a low voice, Step back, Valerian. This cannot be taken lightly. Someone's voice cut in. In the end, is that commoner qualified to teach Diella or not? That is the real issue, Mother. Hearing that voice, Muriella and Valerian both turned to look. When they saw clearly who it was, she smiled and called out, Ray. He stood with his hands behind his back, his face full of solemnity. A commoner daring to act as a magic tutor for a noble is not a normal occurrence. But if he truly has the ability, then there is nothing to worry about. Raig proposed to Duplain, Father, why not let me test Derek? If I defeat him in a magic duel, then. He replied, he is a real mage, you know. He said nothing, just stared straight at him. Afterward, Raig asked, And what about the challenge for Diella? Hearing this, Valerian looked at him, full of curiosity. Raig added, If Derek is a good teacher, then Diella will have learned a considerable amount. I will test his abilities. After hearing those words from his son, he just fell silent without saying anything further. After Raig walked out, Valerian hurried to chase after him. Raig. When he stopped, Valerian asked angrily, What are you thinking? A magic duel. Raig reminded him quietly, Brother, do you really believe Diella has changed? Have you forgotten what she did? Valerian explained, She is still our younger sister, after all. A piece of our own flesh and blood that needs to be protected. Hearing him speak that way, Raig gritted his teeth. Ha, flesh and blood. Suddenly, he shouted in anger, That flesh and blood will drag the entire family into the abyss. Isn't what she has done enough? If we let her step into high society, everything will be over. Valerian frowned. Is that really what you think, Raig? He turned and walked away. The one who crossed the line was always Diella. Diella only deserves to be locked up in the auxiliary villa. He watched Raig's back, lost in thought. Raig left Valerian behind with a look of determination and helplessness. Outside, a bird sat on a tree branch, chirping beside the window frame. Diella pushed the door open from outside and called, Derek. At that moment, he was sitting on the bed reading a book. Seeing her like this, he wondered, What's the matter so early in the morning? A scroll of some sort was thrown by Diella into the open book. Derek opened the scroll. She crossed her arms across her chest and said, If I lose this magic duel, you will be fired. His eyes looked at the paper while his mouth replied, Yes, I know. Young Master Raig is already a proficient one-star mage, so this will likely be difficult. Diella shouted angrily, Is that all you have to say? You're going to get fired. Derek rolled the paper up in his hand. I am a mercenary, so I only accept a job to complete it and receive my payment. He added calmly, I have already received that payment in full. Hearing those words, Diella could not help but be surprised. Are you really serious about this? A week later, a mixed crowd of people was entering. It was Duplain and Muriella, slowly advancing into the stands. Seeing them, Derek bowed, You've arrived. Then he slowly raised his head. Seeing that expression, Duplain thought to himself, He doesn't show the slightest bit of tension. He's very confident, isn't he? He sat in his place and thought, to remain this calm in such a situation. It seems I was too quick to underestimate him. From a distance, footsteps could be heard approaching. By the way they were dressed, one could tell it was Raig. He stepped in with a gloomy air, his hands clenched tight, thinking this isn't just a simple magic duel. Today I will crush Derek. Raig slowly stepped up to the stands. Diella, I will make you regret this to your very bones. On this side, Diella, dressed in a red gown, was also stepping closer to the stands. She raised her head and looked straight ahead with a blank, emotionless expression. Returning to the conversation between Diella and Derek, Do you really want this? Does everything else not matter? He moved as he spoke. You felt it too, haven't you? Your magical energy has entered its orbit. Although you cannot use a one-star spell immediately, it won't be long. Derek draped a cloak over his shoulders. After all, you carry the blood of Duplain. Why are you suddenly saying these things? He glanced at Diella. I've said it before. Studying the wild school means focusing more on self-study than inheriting it from others. She replied with teary eyes, then what? Why are you saying these things now? Seeing her like that, he could only remain silent. At this moment, Diella's expression was grim. Derek, I know I'm not a good student. She bit her lip hard to keep her tears from falling. But I want to continue learning magic from you. I don't want anyone else to teach me. Derek remained silent for a moment. He carefully put on his gloves. I'll say this in advance. I don't know the rules or the rituals of noble magic duels, and I've never tried them before. He glanced at Diella standing behind him, but I can teach you how to win. Do you want to win? Diella was born amidst sarcasm and teasing. They always wore smiles on their lips while speaking hurtful words. It seems young Lady Diella has no magic power, right? Even that famous teacher gave up on her. Oh my, how could the Duplain family have someone like that? The Duplain family is washed up too. All they know is how to cause trouble. The older siblings are talented, so why is the youngest one like that? The Grand Duke must be very troubled. Thank goodness for Azaline. Children are a debt of karma. Children really are a debt. It would have been better if she had never been born. Remembering those words, her eyes were now filled with determination. Please help me win. And in the end, Diella didn't come here as Raig's younger sister, nor as the youngest daughter of the Duplain house. Derek's gaze was following every step Diella took as she approached the stands. Now she stood in this arena as a student of Derek. At the training grounds, when the two had taken their positions, the head butler cleared his throat. The high-level magic dueling laws of the Ebelstein-Kelbram Hall will be applied. Whichever side triggers General Pelham's protective circle first will be ruled the loser. Then let the duel begin. Derek thought General Pelham's protective circle will be triggered as soon as the user suffers significant damage. At the same time, it neutralizes the opponent's magic. I wondered how nobles fought, but I didn't expect them to use such expensive equipment. They must be quite wealthy. The duration is 10 minutes. It seems Raig wants to end the match before the time is up. Raig decided to play big and overwhelmed Diella immediately. He recited an incantation while his hands began to channel magic. Diella stood there calmly in front of the mana orb Raig had created. Raig thought, I'm sorry, but you will have to return to the auxiliary villa. Raig launched a magical blade of wind toward Diella. The girl waited calmly for the attack to get close, then dodged it with a light movement. Raig was frustrated to see his sister dodge so smoothly. How dare she? Raig continued to hurl magic indiscriminately toward Diella. Derek sat below, observing and thinking. He uses one-star magic quite proficiently, but he seems to be a complete amateur in actual combat. Forcing a change in the magic's trajectory must have consumed a lot of mana. Raig's wind sword attack was easily blocked by Diella's ice wall. He thought to himself that wasn't even high-level magic, just the realization of pure mana. Is she planning to use those petty tricks to block my magic? Raig created even more magic orbs. I just need to crush those petty tricks. Try to block this, Diella, remembering what Derek had instructed. Mercenary combat techniques aren't the same as those of the nobility. We don't consider fairness a virtue. We only focus on victory. It's completely different from the usual etiquette and rules in noble duels. So if you win, you might face a lot of gossip. However, we can create a result where you are the winner. Are you really okay with that? Diella, her face full of determination, shouted, of course. Returning to the battle, Diella actively dodged Raig's attacks. In the world of mercenaries, there are always those who win regardless of the disparity in strength. Most of those people do not participate in duels, but in warfare. War here includes controlling the battlefield and utilizing the terrain. In other words, it means using every trick and method necessary to ensure victory. Even an opponent's carelessness can be exploited. Faced with a direct attack, Diella gritted her teeth and erected an ice wall to defend herself. Raig thought it's over. Diella felt a chill down her spine. She looked back and saw Raig's attack had been diverted, turning back to aim straight at her back. Crash, dust, and debris flew everywhere. Derek's face remained terrifyingly calm. Miriella shouted in alarm, Diella. Butler, what are you doing? Stop the match immediately. Diella is going to get hurt. Duke Duplain sat beside her and spoke. Sit down. The match isn't over yet. Miriella asked, what did you say? Duplain reassured her. She wasn't hit. The general's circle hasn't been triggered yet. The Duke cast his eyes toward Derek, thinking to himself. He didn't even blink. Had he anticipated this all along? In the hazy smoke and dust, Raig thought, she was clearly hit by the wind blade. Yet the protective circle didn't activate. Where on earth did she go? Diella knew she couldn't take on her brother in a fair, head-on fight. So she resorted to guerrilla tactics. attacking from beneath the floorboards of the arena. From the ground, a pillar of ice erupted straight toward the sky, giving Raig quite a scare, though fortunately, he managed to dodge it in time. Raig gritted his teeth, thinking, attacking from beneath the arena floor, according to the rules of the Kelbram Hall, leaving the arena floor results in an automatic loss. Seeing the Grand Steward shake his head, Raig smiled bitterly. So that means being under the arena floor doesn't count as leaving the combat zone. They surely never imagined that such a dirty tactic would be used in a magical duel between nobles. Taking advantage of Raig's distraction, Diella continued to conjure ice stalagmites to attack. Raig struggled to dodge, thinking to himself, since I can't see the target, aiming is incredibly difficult. Is that brat just praying to get lucky enough to land even one hit? There wasn't a trace of so-called noble etiquette in this match. Raig looked down at the hole in the arena floor, locking eyes with Diella. That look, that's right, I've seen it before. They look unnervingly calm, exactly like when my brother grabbed Derek by the throat. Raig glanced toward the spectator stand. There was no way Diella could have come up with this method on her own. This is a strategy you laid out, isn't it, Derek? Raig adjusted his cloak, striking a cool pose while maintaining a serious expression as if he were suffering from a stomachache. In that case, I'll play by your strategy. Observing from above, Miriella shouted, is Diella hiding under the arena floor, in that dusty place? She reminded Raig, what are you doing, my dear? Stop the match already. But Duplain gently stroked his chin and said, she isn't breaking any rules, let's watch a little longer. He peered down intently, lost in his own thoughts. Below, Diella observed and evaluated. I can see the mana currents. Above, Raig continued to chant his spells. While he was muttering the incantation, another pillar of ice suddenly appeared from beneath his feet. Raig cursed angrily in his heart. Every time I chant, she attacks from underground. I can't keep going on like this. He then turned his gaze toward the flagpole in front of him. Beneath the ground, Diella felt his mana flow come to a halt. He's definitely planning something. What the hell is he doing? If he dares to chant again, I'll attack immediately. Observing from the outside, Steward Delon was astonished. You can't do that, young master. He said this because, at that moment, Raig had climbed up the flagpole. He looked down and assessed. At this distance, she can't detect my mana, but jumping down in this situation is impossible. Then there's only one way left, he thought, extending his arm and firing an arrow. I'll destroy the arena floor without needing to chant. Instantly, the arrow flew out and embedded itself straight into the flagpole he was standing on. This caused Derek, who was observing from above, to narrow his eyes slightly. The pole snapped in two. Using the momentum, Raig kicked the pole hard. The heavy impact created a large hole in the arena floor. Watching from above, Lady Miriella gasped and called out his name. The impact sent dust and debris flying everywhere, obscuring the view. Raig tried to peer ahead to gather information. At that moment, Diella's blurry silhouette appeared in the dust cloud. He reached out and summoned another magical arrow. The arrow shot forth like a gale. Hit by this attack, Diella's expression turned serious. She reached out, intending to summon magic to block the attack. But then, her mana refused to be summoned. This left her feeling a bit panicked. The arrow continued to hurtle toward her. Now, the only thing she could do was twist her body to the side to dodge the strike. Afterward, she continued to move to maintain her distance. Raig looked toward her and assessed, if I close the gap, I'll have the advantage. If I can just fire one more magical arrow. While he was lost in thought, Diella lunged forward and kicked his chest hard. Her eyes were filled with determination. Taking a direct kick, Raig planted one hand on the ground, breathing heavily. Diella grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it straight at him. Raig was incredibly annoyed, but couldn't do anything about it. Afterward, the girl climbed up onto the arena floor, while Raig gritted his teeth and cursed, damn it, kicking and throwing sand. Is she trying so hard because she's run out of mana? She's striving with all her might to win, even though she knows it's impossible. Is that so? Diella, this match is to prove your self-respect. In that case, I will face you with all my strength, as your brother. After regaining his composure, he climbed onto the arena floor as well. Diella held her head with her hands. Drops of blood began to trickle down her cheek. Derek's words echoed in her mind. Just think of it like painting with a brush. Mana is the paint, and the incantation is the brush. Use the brush to gather the scattered mana and paint a picture. And that is magic. The young girl's eyes were full of surprise as she saw the strands of magical light appearing before her. Returning to the present, she closed her eyes to regain her composure. Then from her body, mana began to surge. Mana is the paint, the incantation is the brush. I can feel the mana swirling at the tips of my fingers. I'll use this paint to create a painting. That is magic. After sensing the mana, Diella was able to conjure a magic circle beneath her feet, along with a spear made of magic. This startled the steward into exclaiming, that is. Even Lady Miriella was moved to tears. My dear Diella, that is first-tier magic. Standing opposite, Raig thought to himself, an ice spear. She finally did it, Diella. The young girl began to manipulate the spear in her hand. On the other side, Raig didn't hesitate, summoning countless magical arrows. He affirmed in his heart, even so, the result won't change. Even if you use first-tier magic, I'm still one step ahead of you. My attack will hit you first, victory will be mine. Diella didn't hesitate, pointing her finger straight ahead to send the spear flying. Across from her, Raig also shouted, launching his magical arrows forward. The two attacks collided, causing a massive, earth-shattering explosion in the surrounding space. Watching from the spectator stand, Miriella anxiously called her name, Diella. As the smoke cleared, a magic circle was summoned in the center of the arena. Both people inside were breathing with extreme exhaustion. Derek, watching from above, wore a serious expression. Scene change, back to 1 year ago at the Duke's mansion. The steward followed behind and said, "My lord, a letter from the Belmiard family arrived this morning. It seems to be about the upcoming networking banquet, my lord. How would you like me to handle it?" While the two were moving, they accidentally passed by Diella's room. She was inside, sitting vacantly as if thinking about something. He saw her, but he didn't say a word. Returning to the present, she looked at the magical barrier before her and was startled. The barrier was activated. Opposite her, Raig also realized the problem. Observing from the stands, his eyes were filled with sadness. He whispered to himself, "Have I lost?" Unable to suppress her emotions any longer, Diella burst into tears like a child. Duplain observed everything, but he remained silent. Seeing this, Miriella stepped forward and shouted, "Dear, dear, what on earth is this madness happening? Calling this vulgar, tricky mess a magical duel? It's absolute insanity. That rural commoner brat, how dare he teach such filth to a young lady of our Duplain family?" He remembered his youth. "My lord, I am Raymond Oswald Duplain. I am honored to accompany the Duke to the battlefield." The Duke had replied, "I have heard much about you from your father. You have his exact eyes, there's no mistake." A gaze full of ambition. At the time he had replied, "Thank you, my lord." Back to the present, looking into his daughter's eyes, he thought, "Her eyes look much better now, Diella." A servant ran up from behind in a panic. "Miss Diella, are you all right?" They rushed over to check on her. "Good heavens, heal her quickly. We must heal her immediately." But she immediately brushed their hands away. "No need." She then took a few steps forward. Facing his younger sister, Raig responded somewhat reluctantly, "Ah, you've worked hard, Diella." She didn't answer, simply bowing her head before turning to leave. Ignoring the servants trying to stop her, "Miss, please come into the inner room." She walked straight toward Derek. He remained calm, looking at her. Her expression seemed to be suppressing something. Unable to hold it back any longer, she burst into tears once more. She clenched her fists, muttering, "I lost, I'm sorry." He looked toward her, then stood up, reassuring her, "It's all right. Failure is nothing unusual. I hope you can move past this bitterness and become stronger, miss." This encouragement didn't appease the girl, but only made her cry even louder. "Wait." The maids continued to run toward her, calling, "Miss." Miriella also anxiously approached, calling her name. "Good heavens, Diella. How did it come to this? It's been tough lately, hasn't it, my daughter?" She pulled her into a hug and comforted her. "It's all right, it's all over now. Let's treat your wounds first, my dear." Feeling the warmth in her words, she finally relaxed and replied, "Yes, mother." Afterward, she went inside with the maids. After his daughter left, he finally regained his composure and stepped behind Derek. Without hesitation, she immediately scolded, "You low-born commoner, do you have any idea what kind of insane thing you've just done? Do you think you're noble just because you taught her a little first-tier magic?" She immediately delivered a stinging slap. She continued to berate him. "You only teach dirty tricks. Don't you dare taint my beautiful, pure lily of a daughter. How dare you let a young lady of the Grand Duke's estate learn such filthy, obscene, and vulgar things?" As she spoke, she slapped him again. "In this world, there are things that someone of your low-born status will never understand. Values that must be preserved and dignity that must be protected." Duplain stepped forward and turned back, saying, "Dear, you see it too, right? This is no longer a magical duel. He dared to teach this garbage to our Diella." Before she could finish her sentence, a loud slap echoed, and the one receiving the blow this time was Miriella. Duplain reminded her, "Do you not realize who is behaving most vulgarly right now?" Seeing she had been slapped, she was confused. "Why, this man, he's just a commoner." He affirmed, "That's right. Even though he is just a commoner, he is also our daughter's teacher. What kind of parent treats their child's teacher this way?" Saying this, he turned toward Derek and softened his tone. "Please forgive her. Everyone has a different way of loving their children." Derek pondered for a moment and replied, "It's all right." Afterward, he turned away. "I have something to discuss with you in private. Follow me to the guest room." Watching the two of them leave, Miriella was furious, gritting her teeth. Back in the guest room, Duplain said, "You have truly helped Diella mature magnificently. As the master of this estate, I should reward you appropriately, to the highest limit a commoner is allowed to reach. He offered, do you want third-tier magic? He looked at him, thinking to himself, he sees right through my heart, seeing things I didn't even realize myself, and offering this. Is this the power of a fifth-tier archmage of the kingdom? If the opportunity has arrived, the only thing to do is seize it quickly, he thought, immediately responding. Yes, I want it. Duplain continued. You taught Diella first-tier magic quite well, but in the upper circles of Ebelstein, that level of achievement isn't enough to survive. Derek understood his meaning. He replied, there are many people in Duplain who can guide Lady Diella. Now that she has grasped the fundamentals, she will progress very quickly. Duke Duplain then said, what my daughter needs is not just a guide, she needs a master. You are harboring an ambition, one that a commoner could never dream of. You understand clearly how insulted those arrogant nobles would feel, don't you? I have overlooked it only because it is you. Derek bowed his head, thinking to himself, the Grand Duke doesn't talk to me much, yet he knows I am aiming for more than just 3 stars, looking toward 4 or even higher. That is what makes this man so terrifying. Duke Duplain continued writing as he spoke. However, if you keep that intention, you cannot stay in this place for long. You have already prepared to leave, haven't you? Derek saw no need to deny it. Yes, that is correct. Suddenly, the Duke offered a negotiation with a very generous price. It's not that I don't see your ambition, but you must teach Diella for a little longer. The highest realm a commoner is permitted to reach. You crave 3-star magic, don't you? He immediately confessed, yes, I do. After finishing his private conversation with Duke Duplain, Derek went straight to the library to find books. Looking at the pile of books in front of him, he felt completely overwhelmed. Many people spend their entire lives trying to obtain a 2-star magic book. Yet this place was filled with nothing but 3-star magic books. This collection alone was enough of a reason to stay in the residence. If Pelline found out, she would definitely make a huge scene. By today, Diella was in very high spirits. I am a 1-star mage now, you know. Derek sat there and didn't deny it. Since you successfully cast a 1-star spell once, you can indeed be called a 1-star mage. Seeing his indifferent attitude, Diella grew angry. Is that all? Don't you feel happy that your student has achieved something? Derek said bluntly, because that is not an achievement worth celebrating too early. Diella turned away in frustration and groaned. You are so difficult. Suddenly, he recalled. It seems you have recovered quite a bit after 3 days, haven't you? You used to cry an awful lot back then. Diella sat down in the chair, huffily retorting. That was just dust in my eyes, I wasn't actually crying. Besides, Father should have told me sooner. I thought you were about to be kicked out. Derek immediately refocused on the main point. Let's start the lesson. Since you are progressing quickly, you will learn other 1-star spells soon enough. Hearing this made Diella beam. What did you just say? What do you mean quickly? Derek continued to praise her. The young lady's development is truly remarkable. Your magic was only recently awakened, and you can already cast 1-star magic. That is a truly rare occurrence. Diella was so complimented she felt like she might burst with pride. I told you I'm the type who says what I'll do and then gets it done. So what should we do first? Mana arrow. That seems convenient since it doesn't require an incantation, or perhaps the wind blade that Raymond used. It looks so powerful. Ice spear also feels great. If I improve a little more, maybe I can even land a hit on Raymond. Derek cut her off. We will practice mana materialization. Diella was a bit discouraged. Why? Aren't we practicing 1-star spells? Derek explained. There are many reasons, but the foundation is always the most important. Simple explanations about mana only left Diella looking completely drained of energy. Fine, if that's what you say, then let's do it. You got my hopes up thinking I'd get to learn 1-star spells. Seeing Derek staring at her, she was confused. Why are you staring at me? Is there something on my face? Derek finally revealed. I'm just surprised that you are being so obedient, that's all. Diella turned her face away in a huff. What kind of person do you take me for? I have respected what you said from the very beginning, you know. Derek reminded her. From the beginning. You dumped dirty water on my head twice, my lady. Diella went silent, not daring to speak up. You still remember that? Derek said point blank. It's hard to forget. So she pretended to dance around to distract him. The weather is lovely, isn't it? Mana materialization sounds fun. I want to do it right now. Mana materialization, how fun. Seeing this child still acting like a child, Derek smiled and sighed. Before long, night had fallen. Diella was lying on her back on the ground, panting heavily after practicing all day. Derek walked over and said, It seems the young lady is going to be busy soon. She sat up with difficulty and asked, Did you hear about it too? Starting next week, I have to take extra lessons in etiquette. Derek said, Isn't that a good thing? You've learned 1-star magic and now you'll be educated as a proper noble. But Diella felt the exact opposite. You think that's a good thing. Noble etiquette, basics, foreign languages, geography, history, botany, piano, embroidery. I don't understand why I have to memorize all of that. How could Sister Azeline endure it all? Derek explained. That is the reason she is called the Flower of Duplain and is at the center of Ebelstein High Society. Diella hesitated and confessed. I only want to learn magic, he replied lightly. Then just keep learning it. Duke Duplain hired me, so we have plenty of time. She lowered her voice. I wonder if we really have plenty of time. Derek wondered, who could possibly fire me? Diella was a bit troubled. Father has acknowledged you, but Mother will not let it slide. He was confused. Why would the madam want to fire me? She finally revealed. Learning from you makes me stray from noble dignity. She is afraid I will become like a mercenary. Even that duel was far from the dignity that nobles pursue. Derek was very calm. Well, that's simple. Making the madam keep quiet isn't difficult. Just take away her excuse. The very next morning, Muriella was incredibly anxious. I never expected my daughter to encounter such a terrifying teacher. My poor child. In her imagination, Derek would tie up a guard and begin the lesson. Watch closely, Diella. This is the mercenary style. The second lesson was Diella hauling an entire wild boar into the residence to intimidate others. Is this the famous Ebelstein High Society? Everyone would scream in terror. It's Diella Catherine Duplain. Imagining this, she clutched her head in despair. What could that lowly person possibly teach Diella? Even if my husband accepts it, I am the mistress of this house. I must find a way. Seeing Muriella open the door to enter the room, Diella spoke up. Mother. She didn't bother looking and closed her eyes to enjoy herself. Oh, Diella, even though people say you aren't mature yet, Mother still loves it when you smile in my arms. But unlike every other time, Diella did not run up to hug her like a child. She looked every bit like a proper noble lady. Diella held the edges of her dress and greeted her gently. Did you sleep well last night, Mother? Because I had to recover from my injury, I couldn't leave my room. I am very sorry that I missed the opportunity to talk with you. I have so many things I want to share with you, but unfortunately, I have to study piano all morning. Muriella was stunned and stammered. I understand. Diella bowed her head politely and said, Then, if you will excuse me, I must go, as I am busy with my class, Mother. Muriella was still in shock and asked awkwardly, The etiquette class hasn't started yet, has it? Right. It isn't supposed to start until next week. Diella acted just like Azeline. She said gently, Yes, Mother. Thanks to your concern, I am very much looking forward to them. Muriella had no choice but to let her leave. Go quickly, don't be late. But while Diella was leaving, a servant accidentally dropped something in front of her. Diella asked kindly, Are you hurt? Don't overwork yourself. The maid was just as shocked as Muriella. Yes, Lady Diella. And so, Diella walked away under the gaze of everyone who looked on in surprise. The scene shifted to the Abelston Noble District, and a voice rang out. Recently, it feels like the Salon Rosia is always filled with laughter. Lady Azeline, I was truly very worried at the last gathering because you seemed so weighed down by worries. Hearing this, Azeline was startled and replied, Oh, is that so? I didn't intend to worry you all. Most of the things I was worried about have been resolved, so I feel much better now. Opposite her, the red-haired girl was the second daughter of the Belmeard family, Ellent Ulfione Belmeard. Hearing this, Ellent was relieved. What a relief! When I heard the rumor that you had left the noble district to save someone, I was very worried. Azeline smiled and replied, Thank you for worrying about me, Lady Ellent. Actually, my younger sister, Diella, was in need of a magic tutor. I was busy because I had to go look for one myself. Ellent thought to herself, What? Azeline went to find one herself. What does that mean? How talented must that tutor be if the young lady of the Duplain house had to go find him herself? Beside her, the white-haired girl continued, What did you say? Your younger sister. This girl is the second daughter of the Veltis family, Denise Lineaire Veltis. Azeline explained. Yes, that's right. When I met Diella at the residence not long ago, she had become such a model young lady that I almost couldn't recognize her. She has even awakened her first-tier magic, and her manners are very neat and calm. That makes me feel like I need to put in more effort. Hearing this, Denise pondered, That's strange. Is Azeline raising her younger sister? Isn't the Duplain family trying to hide Diella? She responded, It seems you found a good magic tutor. Azeline nodded in agreement. Yes, he has no status, but he is certainly a person of exceptional ability. It was truly worth going all the way to the Beldun Mercenary Corps to find him personally. This made both noble ladies startle. A mercenary, Ellent thought back and said, Wait, isn't she the reason the chef at our residence ran away from the Duplain house? Recalling what the chef had once said, Lady Ellent is truly so kind. Ellent sipped her tea and continued to think. I never expected that tutor not only to reform that infamous thug, but also to turn her into a first-tier mage. The corner of her mouth curled into an intrigued smile. She turned to Azeline and asked, "May I ask the name of that magic tutor?" Azeline was a bit surprised by this question and replied, "What was that?" Elent continued, "If he is the tutor for Lady Diella, he will become even more famous in the future, won't he? At the very least, I want to know his name in advance." Hearing this, Azeline introduced him happily. "Oh, his name is Derek." Back at the Duplain residence, Diella was sitting and talking with her mother. She began to recount the training process over the past while. "Derek is also teaching me a bit of etiquette. Learning etiquette on my own is actually very difficult." Opposite her, Miriella praised, "I see. It is truly admirable that you are studying on your own." She immediately denied it. "It's not so much that I am self-studying, but rather that Derek is teaching me." Her mother asked, "What is the most difficult thing about your self-study?" She chuckled and replied, "Almost everything is very difficult. That I could make it to this point is all thanks to Derek." However, the constant mention of his name in Diella's speech made Miriella feel a bit of anger in her heart, though on the surface, she remained cordial. "Oh, I see." Once she was outside, her emotions were finally released. That damned Derek. How many more times will that name come up? Honestly, I don't know what he did to her, but I cannot just let it be like this. There must be a way to solve this. Outside in the garden, the servants were happily talking to each other. Lady Diella has been very kind to the servants lately. She has become much more gentle. The old gardener next to them replied, "Lately, Lady Diella seems very happy. She has changed a lot in just a few weeks." The butler shared similar observations. "It really is a surprise, because that is the demeanor I have only ever seen in Lady Azeline. Perhaps she is finally trying to become a true lady. Now we can even feel the noble aura from Lady Diella." Hearing Derek's name wherever she went made Miriella extremely angry. She could only grind her teeth. The scene shifted to the evening. Outside the residence, Derek was sitting and practicing the new magic book he had received. After feeling a slight change in his body, he reached his hand out in front of him and began to cast the technique. Feeling an immense source of power swirling within his body, Derek gritted his teeth against the intense pain. Afterward, the energy on his arm gradually dissipated into the air. He breathed heavily and collapsed onto the ground. Then from behind, someone stepped forward, drawing his attention. It was Reg. He put on a friendly face. "Oh, excuse me. Am I interrupting your practice?" Even though he was very tired, he replied politely, "Not at all. What brings you all the way out here?" The two of them began to talk, and Reg turned to ask, "I want to talk a little bit about Diella." He nodded, "Very well." Then he directed his gaze toward the book in Derek's hand. "But before that, isn't that a 3-star magic book?" He nodded in confirmation. "Yes, Duke Duplain lent it to me." Hearing this made Reg startle. "My father lent you that?" He replied, "Yes. It's a difficult level for me right now, but there's no harm in learning it early." Recalling what Duke Duplain had said, "That's enough. He is a real mage." Hearing this, Reg understood the issue. "I see. That is truly impressive." He returned to the main topic. "So, what is the matter regarding Lady Diella that you wanted to see me about?" Reg felt a bit shy and began to explain. "Oh, right about that. Actually, it's a bit complicated, but what do young girls like these days?" Faced with this strange question, he looked at him but didn't answer immediately. Reg continued, "If I stitched a doll that looked like her, would she like it?" Thinking of the doll in Diella's room earlier, he replied firmly, "Definitely not." Sweat poured down Reg's face in embarrassment. "Oh, right. Well, I guess that would be the case. I'm not saying I'm going to make it or anything." Derek replied, "Yes, I don't think it would be something to look forward to. Should we go inside early if you finished practicing?" Afterward, he followed Reg inside the residence. As the two were moving, Reg spoke up. "Anyway, I am very grateful to you. The atmosphere in the family has been very good lately. Even Valerian has been focusing on managing the territory, and Father, though he doesn't show it, seems very satisfied." He asked, "Is that so? It's hard to guess his feelings." Reg laughed and replied, "Everyone in this residence would agree with that. I suppose I should accept what I need to accept. People will eventually change, especially children at that age. I don't know if it's because I didn't realize it sooner or because I intentionally avoided it, but since Diella has changed, I think I should change too. This is all thanks to you, Derek, thank you." Facing this expression of gratitude, he was a bit bewildered. Ahead, Reg returned to the topic of Diella. "By the way, Diella's magic feels like a different type." He asked from behind, "Can you tell the difference?" Reg answered, "Yes, it's like painting a picture." He thought to himself, a genius is still a genius, isn't she? Truly typical of the Duplain family. Noticing this, he nodded. "Yes, Lady Diella uses the natural school's way of operating mana." Reg replied, "Oh, the natural school? I've heard of it." He continued, "The way each person uses mana is very different. Once she reaches a certain orbit, she will explore the truth on her own without me having to explain anything. And at that level, the intervention of a tutor can even become an obstacle. Understanding his meaning, Raig replied, I understand. At that level, her moment of shining will also come. The scene shifted to 2 months later, when a small flower appeared on the table in Diela's room. She wondered, what is this? Why are there flowers? The servant behind her replied, they bloomed so beautifully, so I brought them here to pin on the young lady's hair. Picking up the flower and beginning to smell its scent, Diela was extremely satisfied. They are very fragrant. It feels as though spring has been present for the past few months. I can use first-tier magic comfortably, and I've also become closer with the servants. Perhaps I have missed out on many things until now. I think all of that is thanks to Derek. The servant behind her replied, I was just wondering why the young lady looked so happy today. Is today a magic lesson day? Diela replied, yes, do I look that happy? The servant took the flower and replied, then I must pin it on beautifully. From outside, a mocking voice rang out, oh, give me one of the leftover flowers so I can give it to Derek. The flower in her hand suddenly fell to the ground. Her eyes welled up with tears. What is that supposed to mean, Derek? He and Valerian were standing in front of her door. He explained, just as you heard, my lady. I have nothing left to teach Lady Diela. The law of the seasons is always like that. There is no winter that lasts forever, and there will be no spring that is eternal. Back in the Duke's study, he offered his assessment. Perhaps you have already realized it, but Miss Diela belongs to the natural school, and among those, her specific aptitude is exceptionally powerful. If I continue to interfere in her affairs, I will only end up breaking her wings. As a mage himself, the Duke understood what he meant. I see. In that case, you no longer have any reason to remain in this mansion. He nodded in confirmation. Yes, that is correct. The Duke fell silent for a few seconds, deep in thought. Then he rose from his chair, walked to the window, and began to open up. Thanks to you, many things have changed. And it is also thanks to you that my daughter has been able to mature. I have been too preoccupied with managing the territory to be a good father, but now I feel somewhat at ease. So when will you be leaving? He replied, I heard that Lady Azeline will soon visit the mansion and then return to Abelston. I intend to travel in her carriage when that happens. The Duke responded, I understand. Will you be returning the library key? He answered, yes, I will return the magic books I have been studying, and I will hand over the key to the chief steward. The Duke cut him off. There is no need for that. Return the key right now. Saying this, he cast a contemplative glance at the magic book resting nearby. The Duke continued, if there is nothing else, you may leave immediately. He seemed to have something more to say, but couldn't bring himself to speak. He immediately bowed in respect, then turned and left. As soon as he left the Duke's office, he ran into Diela. She had been waiting for him for quite a while. Teacher, you arrived here so suddenly, and now you are leaving just as abruptly. He intended to cut her off, Miss Diela, but that was unavoidable. She continued, I know you won't listen, but I'm going to say it anyway. Her voice grew quieter. Can't you stay? He pondered for a few seconds, then stepped closer to her, beginning his explanation as usual. I will return to my life as a mercenary, and I will continue to learn a great deal more magic. And once Miss Diela has equipped herself with more skills, you will come to Abelston for your debut into high society. We can meet again then. If my level increases a bit before that time, I will be able to teach you a few new things. Is he trying to comfort me? Diela complained, how annoying. You're always right, so I have nothing left to argue with. The scene shifted to the evening. Diela was deep in sleep. In her dream, countless gazes were directed at her. They mocked. Diela, you are a useless child, a completely incompetent brat. What do you have to be proud of besides your bloodline? You don't even have a shred of talent. You are the shame of the Duplain family. You should never have been born. Upon hearing this, her eyes suddenly flew open. She bolted upright in fear, screaming, no way. She took several rapid breaths to regain her composure. She rubbed her head, reassuring herself it was just a nightmare. Hearing the commotion inside, a maid pushed the door open. Miss Diela, are you all right? I heard a scream. What happened? She looked at the maid before her, thinking to herself, what if I make up an excuse? Perhaps I could go back to slapping her like I used to, throw a tantrum and cause trouble. Then Teacher Derek would stay here because of me, right? Seeing she didn't answer, the maid asked anxiously, Miss Diela, are you okay? Are you feeling uncomfortable anywhere? Deep inside, she was experiencing a fierce internal struggle. A moment later, she replied, no. She thought, I won't do things like that anymore. She offered a radiant smile. I'm fine, so don't worry. She continued to think that won't make me any more valuable. The scene shifted to the next day. A new day had begun at the mansion. Early in the morning, a carriage carrying Azeline was waiting outside. Seeing him, she spoke, Is it all right if I drop you off at the business district? He didn't refuse. Yes, I would be very grateful if you could. She smiled. Say your goodbyes. We will be departing soon. Upon hearing this, he finally turned his head to look at the people he had been close to all this time. Only Diella avoided his gaze. Valerian looked toward him, puzzled. So you are really leaving, he replied. I must return to the place where I belong. Raig added from the side, life in the mansion must not have been easy for you. You have worked very hard all this time. If anything happens, remember to contact me. I will help within my capabilities. Hearing their kindness, he bowed his head. Thank you. Then he directed his gaze toward Diella. She was also staring fixedly at him. The two didn't speak for a long while. Then Diella shouted, how can you look at me like that? Do you think I'm going to beg you not to go? Is that it? Don't you dare misunderstand. I'm not a child anymore. This satisfied him greatly. He stood tall and said, teaching you was an honor. I cannot boastfully claim to be your tutor, but I hope you will remember the magic you learned with me. Diella pouted, HMPH, sorry, but I'm going to boastfully claim that you are my tutor. You won't be able to live in peace anymore. After all, you are the tutor of the great Diella Catherine Duplain. After that remark, there was another silence. Seeing him stare at her, she shyly looked away, her voice sounding a bit reproachful. Take care of yourself, don't do anything dangerous and get hurt. He also warned, I will be fine, you shouldn't overwork yourself. Diella said confidently, I'm an adult now, I can take care of myself. These words felt incredibly familiar to him, because those were the exact words he had said to his own master in the past. I am an adult now, I can take care of myself. His master had gently walked over and hugged him. Derek, remember what I have told you. Back to the present, he called out, Miss Diella. He leaned in, placed a hand on her head, and reminded her, you don't need to grow up so quickly. That sentence touched her heart, and she couldn't stop her tears. But then she tried to regain her confidence, waving cheerfully. See you later, Derek. He bowed politely in return. See you in Ableston, Miss Diella. The scene shifted to the afternoon. He was now at the Ableston business district. He opened the door and entered his familiar tavern. Inside, Pellin was beating a fat man to a pulp. The crowd behind was shouting excitedly, that's it. Kill him, beat him to a bloody pulp. Noticing someone enter, she landed a decisive blow. Then she turned back and smiled, calling his name Derek. He took off his hat and smiled. I'm home. Scene shifted to the next day at the Beldon Tavern. Inside, Jaden began. Although it can't compare to the tea of the nobility, this is the honey wine you like best. Consider it a homecoming party on me. He replied happily, thank you. Seeing his attitude, Pellin turned to him, frustrated. What? Why do you look so pale? Did working at the noble mansion make you all posh and white? I thought those nobles were drugged to hire you as a magic tutor. What was it really like? Tell us a bit. He was too lazy to explain. I just went to do my job. There's nothing special to tell. Pellin continued to taunt him. Wow, why are you talking so posh? Would it kill you to tell us a little? Jaden interjected to soothe things. Pellin, lower your voice and drink this. Finding herself interrupted made her a bit annoyed. How annoying. When he was gone, I had to take on all the work by myself until I was exhausted. He looked at him and continued. But didn't Derek bring back a ton of money in exchange? Did they pay you exactly as agreed? He answered, it's worth much more than money. I've gained something far more important. Saying this, he brought out a magic book and placed it on the table. Observing the book, Jaden assessed, what is this? A second-tier magic book? Pellin was also surprised. Hey, such a precious thing. While they were still surprised, he added, it's not. This is a third-tier magic book. This made both of them jump. Did you steal it? If you get caught, your head will be off your shoulders. Pellin added, wow, so what if you stole it? This is third tier. I want to steal it too. Where is it? He responded indifferently. The Duke bestowed it upon me. These seemingly absurd words made Pellin dissatisfied. You, stop bragging. Did they really need a tutor there? Answer me. The rapid-fire questions made him a bit tired. He looked out the window. It was already the middle of the night. Jaden was busy cleaning the tavern, then turned to ask, any new work lately? He replied, HMPH, you've only been back for a day and you already want to take a job. He said confidently, yes, if it's some light work. I feel like my instincts are getting a bit dull. This intrigued Jaden, really. Even someone like you feels your instincts are dull. Mages are always in need. If you want work, there's plenty to go around. He offered, then starting tomorrow would be fine. Find me the earliest job possible, please. Scene shifted to the next day. He and Pellin were in a carriage leaving the town. Their job for the day was hunting monsters. After a bit of a struggle, they managed to exterminate a goblin. Afterward, they had to face a swarm of giant spiders. A long day passed, and they returned to the carriage to prepare for camping that night. While Pellin was fast asleep, he left his bed. He went to a clearing nearby and began practicing magic. Gradually, he felt the power spreading through his body. He reached out and created a tiny crystal. which contained an incredibly powerful force. Its power was so great that it sent him reeling backward. Then a massive explosion occurred, shaking the entire forest. He slowly sat up, looked at his arm, and breathed heavily. Even though I've grasped most of the key points of second-tier magic, this third-tier wall is truly too high. In the blink of an eye, summer passed and autumn arrived. And after that came winter. The tavern door swung open. He and Pelen walked inside. Pelen was shivering from the cold. It's freezing. How much colder can the weather get? Seeing them return, Jaden praised. Back late, aren't you? Crossing through this weather to get to the Kent Mountains. Pelen complained. Seriously, I told you to wait until it was warmer. Taking the bag of loot, Jaden praised. Only madmen like you would go chop off harpy heads in weather like this. Derek nodded. Thank you. Pelen was enjoying the warmth of a hot towel. This feels so good. He turned back to the two. You must be tired. Rest tomorrow, shall we? There's a job that would suit you perfectly, Derek. He wondered, what is it? He smiled. It's a light job with good pay, though it's a bit troublesome. Scene shifted to the next day. He walked down the street, thinking to himself, this is a request from the Rohul mercenary group in the west. You've probably heard of them, the Count Belmierd family. They seem to be looking for ordinary people to be training partners for magic. In other words, they need a dummy to vent their anger on. Just go there, stand around, and let them hit you a few times, and that's it. After a long journey, he arrived at the magic arena of the noble district. Inside, Elent was walking with a bald old man. She turned to ask, and who do I have to fight today? He replied, today we have prepared a commoner for you to practice offensive magic. This left her dissatisfied. What? You're asking me to fight a commoner? He affirmed, this is also part of the training, my lady. We've promised him a decent reward, so please practice to your heart's content. She replied, bored, is that so? So-called training is really just using noble status to bully commoners. He explained, but at least he is a first-tier mage. She continued, even the professor is about to reach the second-tier threshold. Isn't the difference between first and second tier like heaven and earth? Elsewhere, Derek was changing his clothes to prepare for work. A figure walked up to him, making him look up. Ellen approached and asked, are you it? My opponent for today. He bowed, my name is Derek. She introduced herself, Ellent, then thought to herself, Derek. That name sounds familiar. I think I've heard it somewhere before. The bald man pointed to the training ground. All right, please step onto the arena. While she watched him closely, is this guy really a mage? Why does he look so young? The two then stepped onto the training ground. She said, all right, so. Do you know the basic rules of a magic duel? He replied, yes, I know a little bit. This satisfied her slightly. That's good. Fight back with everything you've got. I'll try to end this quickly. She calculated in her mind, even though I'm being forced to do this. If I use a shockwave to knock him off the floor, it should be over soon. Suddenly he asked, fight back with everything I've got. To what extent should I do that? This unexpected question left her a bit confused. Huh, what are you talking about? He explained, I need to know how hard I should fight back so I can be of help to Lady Ellen. Hearing these words from him made the bald man shake his head in helplessness. However, this only made Ellen more excited. You're really saying something ridiculous. I already told you fight back with all your might. Derek, on his side, pondered for a few seconds before beginning to channel mana into his arm. If that's the case, I will gladly comply with your wishes, my lady. She, on the other side, also began channeling mana around her body. She reached her arm forward, muttering ancient incantations, thinking to herself, that commoner brat deserves some praise for reaching the first-tier realm at his age. But he's too arrogant. I will show him the wall that separates nobles from commoners. She continued her chant one more time, and as soon as she finished, she immediately fired a mana bullet straight at him. This sudden attack did not cause him to lose his usual composure. As soon as the bullet got close, he simply tilted his body to one side, dodging with extreme simplicity. The bullet then slammed into a tree in the distance, splitting the trunk in two. The scene unfolded in an instant, leaving Ellent slightly surprised. He stood opposite her and said calmly, what is your next attack? She grew a bit angry, cursing internally. This brat seems to have a reason to be this confident after all. But that doesn't mean the gap between us will disappear. Saying this, she began to whisper other incantations. Countless mana arrows rose from the ground and shot into the air. They moved as if they had a mind of their own, controlled by her. She pointed her finger straight at him and ordered, let's end this with this move. On this side, he didn't rush to dodge, but immediately fired a burst of magic. His mana bullet easily shattered her mana arrows with incredible precision. Afterward, it flew straight toward her, signaling an unreserved retaliation. She began to calculate. It's just a simple piece of magic, but he can control it to this extent. The bald man watching from the outside was also secretly excited. Ha ha, for a commoner, his skill is truly excellent. It seems the rumors about him weren't just talk. Elent's anger surged to its peak, and she continued to chant another incantation. I admit that I underestimated you. This time I will attack seriously. Observing the source of power radiating from these arrows, Derek felt a hint of caution. She had changed her tactics. She wasn't aiming to hit him, but was she planning to blow up the entire arena? For a noble, this level of adaptability was quite impressive. Her arm was raised high. Thousands of arrows shot straight into the sky, forming a giant rain of arrows aimed directly at him. Looking at that, he immediately assessed that he could not dodge this attack. Instantly, he dropped to one knee and began to summon a protective layer of magic. Countless arrows flew in and collided with the barrier, creating piercing, screeching sounds. Continuous collisions filled the surrounding space with smoke and dust. After the smoke cleared, he appeared from behind the haze without sustaining any injuries. But his gaze suddenly froze at the scene before him, because Elent had taken advantage of the opening to lunge forward, preparing to unleash her next attack. He quickly assessed the situation. At such close range, there was no way to dodge, nor was there time to erect another barrier. Her talent is truly insane. At that very moment, he snapped his fingers. The space around them suddenly flared with a blinding light. Unable to keep her eyes open, Elent shouted in anger, "Damn it, my eyes." She still tried to move forward, slowly opening her eyes. Observing her surroundings, she couldn't see him anywhere. She cursed to herself. "Where did that bastard go? I can't see anything." She told herself, "Focus, Elent, just listen carefully. I can react in time if I just find his location." Just then, she felt something brush past her face. What was that? I didn't hear any sound at all. Don't tell me. At that exact moment, Derek's image appeared before her eyes. Surrounding him were countless mana bullets. Without hesitation, he fired a barrage of mana bullets at her with extreme speed, forcing her to struggle to dodge them. She immediately realized, is this an illusion spell that eliminates sound? He even anticipated that I would rely on my hearing. Then that first attack that missed. Did he dare to go easy on me? She defended herself while cursing under her breath. No way. Suddenly, he lunged straight toward her, catching her by surprise. He's closing the distance? What a fool. High-speed magic deployment is my specialty. Focus, Elent, the moment the magic appears from his hands. I will strike first and end this match. But at that very moment, he suddenly changed his movement. He stomped hard on the ground, pushing her backward. From the tip of his foot, countless bolts of lightning began to emerge. She immediately realized, is he deploying magic from the tips of his toes? The surprise attack forced her to struggle to defend herself. The bald man observing from the outside thought to himself, impressive. The kid seems to belong to the natural school, but I can't read the flow of his mana at all. From the perspective of the orthodox school, it's really hard to keep up. Sitting on the ground panting, Elent spoke. You really are an interesting brat. She stood up, walked toward him, and said, I'll be honest with you. At first, I looked down on you and thought you were just a blowhard. She leaned in close, lowered her head, and continued. But you taught me something interesting. Because of that, thank you. Saying this, she channeled mana into her feet and began to deploy a spell. Faced with this sudden attack, he immediately reached his hands forward to block the pressure. Afterward, he skillfully redirected the flow of the attack. The strike was immediately deflected, turning back to attack Elent. The trajectory of the attack forced her to step back. Immediately, he lunged forward with another attack manifesting in his hands. His gaze was filled with determination as he rushed straight toward his opponent, and Elent looked at him with eyes full of astonishment, mixed with fear. Derek descended from the sky, his right hand wrapped around a razor-sharp purple energy, crackling like tiny lightning over the ground. Elent looked up, her eyes wide with astonishment and disbelief. Sweat beaded and ran down her cheekbones, her body momentarily frozen under the overwhelming pressure of his movement. Suddenly, a sharp bell rang, cutting through the tense air of the battlefield. The bespectacled instructor standing at the sidelines wore a stern expression as he repeatedly shook the bell to signal the end of the match. That sound forced both to stop. Derek's feet hit the stone floor heavily, and the purple energy dissipated from his hand. He immediately regained his composure, placed a hand over his chest, and bowed politely. You've worked hard, Miss Elent. Elent stood silent for a moment, breathing hard, her head spinning as she tried to process what had just happened. The scene shifted a while later to the viewing pavilion under gentle sunlight. Elent sat at an intricately carved table, a maid standing solemnly behind her. She looked at Derek, her tone gentle but sincere. You truly are an outstanding mage. Derek stood opposite, shook his head lightly, and declined the compliment. Not at all, Miss Elent. You are the truly remarkable one. This is the first time I've met someone with such keen thinking as yours. Elent caught his gaze and gave a knowing smile. That smooth tongue showed he was well versed in the ways of the upper class. She continued, teasing slightly. I've heard rumors that you come from a common background, but judging by your ability, you must have worked until you bled to get here. Derek bowed his head, his expression turning serious. For me, that effort was necessary. I had to survive as a mercenary. Elent's eyes softened as she said quietly, "Don't be too modest. I admire those who strive." Then she glanced back at the bespectacled instructor quietly reading a book. "But that old magic teacher standing behind, he doesn't seem to like you, so it's best not to do anything to catch his eye. And thanks, you taught me a lot from today's match." She sipped her tea slowly and continued, "There's an upcoming friendly match at the Roja Salon. I hope for a good result." Derek looked at her and said confidently, "With your level, I believe there's nothing to worry about." Elent set the teacup down, the porcelain clinking lightly but decisively. Her gaze grew sharp and distant. "I'm not concerned about those minnows. The one people really want to defeat at all costs is Alina Duplain." When that name left her lips, an image of a graceful, noble blue-haired girl flashed through Elent's mind. Her face was clouded by dark competition and fierce determination. Derek was silent, his red eyes fixed on her, feeling the weight of that ambition. Finally, Elent realized she'd said too much. She waved her hand and returned to a normal tone. "Oh dear, why did I say that? You may go now." Derek turned and walked away, his black cloak billowing with each step as he left the pavilion. Alone, Elent lifted her teacup again. She thought to herself, Derek of the Beldern Mercenary Company. That name echoed in her mind. She was sure she'd heard it somewhere before. Memories rushed back. Alina's voice had mentioned Derek that day. Elent's eyes widened as if struck by lightning. All the pieces suddenly fell into place. She sprang to her feet, her footsteps pounding. Elent rushed forward and grabbed Derek's arm tightly. Just before he stepped out of the grounds, Derek turned his head back, his expression calm but slightly curious. Elent looked up at him, a fierce, wide smile spreading across her face, her eyes shining with a new kind of hunger. She asked directly, voice trembling with excitement, "Are you the mercenary who trained Diella?" As the sun began to set, long orange shadows stretched across the grounds. The scene shifted to a large room, the crackling fireplace providing the only light and warmth. They sat opposite each other at a small table. Elent wasted no time and went straight to the point, leaning forward, her tone low and determined. "As long as I can surpass Alina, I'm willing to give up anything." Derek studied her closely, the firelight reflecting in his red eyes. "Let me repeat the name. You truly want to beat Miss Alina?" Elent nodded. "Yes, Alina herself hasn't reached the 2-star threshold yet. If I can reach 2-star rank before her, that would be wonderful. But if not, at least I must defeat her at this magic conference." Derek observed, "Your will to win is truly admirable, Miss." Elent sneered softly. "A will to win? You sure know how to dress it up with flowery words." She looked down at her teacup, her reflection wavering in the amber liquid. "Maybe so. It's become an obsession for me now. Before, just to beat Alina, I didn't hesitate to use the vilest tricks. That envy and hatred were truly filthy and ugly. I once harbored deep jealousy toward Alina, yet the results were never as good as I hoped. No matter how much I slandered her behind her back or tried to pick faults, Alina always remained forgiving and ready to embrace me." Derek asked, "Why are you telling me this?" Elent looked straight into his eyes, her tone so sincere there was no doubt. "I expose my own flaws because I want you to see how serious I am. And I have a few questions I need you to answer." Derek replied calmly, "Please ask away." She inhaled deeply. "If you've worked at the Duplain estate, you must know, what is Alina's true strength level? And how does my current level compare to hers? That's why I sought you out to ask. If I truly want to defeat Alina once and for all, what do I need to do?" The room fell silent, only the fire crackling remained. Derek sipped his tea slowly, the cup clinked gently against the saucer. He admitted, "I must acknowledge Miss Alina's skills are astonishing. However, Miss Elent also possesses no less innate talent. But at this moment, no matter how hard you train." His words trailed off when he saw Elent's gaze. "Sometimes one can read a person's heart from a single look. And the girl standing before me now isn't craving empty praise, but rather a powerful longing. She's desperate enough to beg for answers from a lowly mercenary." Silence stretched through the room. Finally, Derek spoke, his voice even and without hesitation. "You cannot defeat Miss Alina." The cold words hung in the air. Elent didn't blink though her face tightened. Derek stared at Elent, waiting for her response. She answered, "No matter how difficult it is, I'm determined to win. Even if it's impossible, I'll do it." She leaned forward, pressing both hands hard on the table. "Didn't you turn a troublemaker like Diella into a mage? So can't you help me surpass Alina even once?" Derek fell silent for a long time, his eyes half closed as if weighing the matter. Finally, he admitted, "It's not that there's no way, But before we begin, there are two things that trouble me. Alent sat back, folding her arms, pleased he hadn't refused outright. Good, now we can talk. What are you wondering? Derek asked first. First, do you know what method I used to teach Miss Diella? As he spoke, a dark memory rose in her mind. An image of Derek standing over a terrified, crying Diella, drawing a sword, his face cold and merciless. Alent did not flinch and answered immediately. I don't know the details, but I'm willing to do anything to win. Derek moved to the second point. As you know, I'm a mercenary, so... Alent cut him off before he finished. What does that matter? There will surely be gossip about a noble lady learning magic from a lowly mercenary. But Derek, remember I'm being extremely serious right now. I must become someone renowned across this empire. If I can't even top the Belstein aristocracy, then all my efforts are meaningless. So don't use those flimsy excuses to underestimate my burning determination. I know very well what truly matters more than false pride. Derek looked up at her, completely unmoved by the impassioned speech. He calmly corrected, "No, that's not what I meant. I meant that as a mercenary I charge a fee for my services." The dramatic tension in the room abruptly shifted. Alent, ready for a battle of honor and status, went suddenly silent. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment, as she realized she had completely misunderstood him. "Oh, it's about money, so that's what you meant. Of course, whatever the amount, I can afford it." Alent tried to hide the shame covering her. Why is this room suddenly so hot? Across from her, Derek narrowed his eyes, thinking, if she values this that much, I'll have to use extremely harsh methods to have any chance of success. The scene shifted to the next day. At a gathering of young ladies, Elena was surrounded by other girls. The upcoming gathering will include a magic contest. I hear Miss Alent's skills have improved greatly. I need to prepare carefully. Oh my, is it time for the next meeting already? Then I must attend too. From behind, Alent stepped forward slowly and spoke. Miss Elena, you're so modest. Elena turned to look and smiled. Miss Alent, so you're here. We were just talking about Miss Alent. Alent stepped closer to the group. I know because I heard Miss Elena's voice from afar. The two girls behind felt it appropriate to fall silent. Alent smiled gently, teasing. But even Miss Elena needs extra practice. Haven't you never tasted defeat? Besides, you're praised as the radiant flower of the Duplain clan. Elena bowed slightly. Thank you for the compliment. But this time my opponent is Miss Alent, so I absolutely cannot be complacent. Hearing that, Alent beamed with satisfaction. Honestly, I'm a bit confident because I just found a new magic tutor. Though he's common-born, his work record is impressive, so I agreed to hire him. How curious, Miss Alent personally hearing him like this. You must have great faith in this new magic tutor's abilities, yes. Alent thought briefly, then smiled. Him to be precise, the one who placed the trust wasn't me but Miss Elena herself. What? My trust? Elena turned to Alent in surprise. Alent spoke with a triumphant smile. Because the tutor's name is Derek. Elena's eyes widened. For a moment she was stunned at that name. Seeing her opponent's expression, Alent smiled inwardly. Ha ha ha, look at that bewildered white rabbit face. Feeling furious, are you? Feeling much less bitter now, aren't you? The one you couldn't keep is in my hands now. But contrary to Alent's expectation, Elena only replied softly. Oh, how surprising. Congratulations, Miss Alent. Perhaps you've already realized it yourself, right? He's a very thoughtful and extremely reliable person. Elena beamed with genuine happiness. Once again, congratulations, Miss Alent. The smile on Alent's face suddenly turned awkward. Thank you. Wait, this isn't how I imagined it. Speaking of this, Elena suddenly remembered a conversation with her younger sister. Diella, why don't you try asking Derek for some extra guidance in magic? Recently, I feel your power has been stalling a bit. If it's Derek, we can completely trust and entrust it to him. Diella heard this and immediately refused. No need, it's really not necessary. I don't think there's any need for that at all. Please never do that, because you are the most important person to me. Elena was lost in her own thoughts. Alent, standing beside her, was delighted. That's right. When Islin thinks about it carefully, she must surely understand what it means for me to snatch him away. Go ahead and harbor your resentment. I, Alent of Belstein, have taken your teacher away. Elena snapped out of it and spoke. Oh, Lady Alent, actually, Derek is a bit... Alent interrupted her. Oh my, is it that late already? Today's conversation was truly interesting. Today is the first lesson, so I must take my leave now. Alent walked away, smiling at her own fantasies, leaving Elena feeling extremely confused. Surely there won't be any serious problems, right? After all, Derek isn't that kind of villainous person. Beside the two, a girl with white hair enjoying tea had seen it all. She took a sip of tea and thought to herself, those people are really living their lives quite fiercely. Scene shift back to the Beldern mercenary group. Derek was having a conversation with the captain. That's how it is for now. Soon I'll need to focus all my attention on the work there. At the Count Belstein family, why is your workload growing so large? Derek replied calmly. Besides, I don't have to travel all the way to the Count's mansion, so it's less exhausting. Dealing with everything neatly at Belstein is enough. The captain complained. Hey, that sounds easy. But do you think our young lady can defeat Lady Alina in that match? Derek looked into the cup of water in his hand. It's not entirely hopeless. I still have a way. As long as Lady Alent can break through to the 2-star level, even if she faces Lady Alina, we can still use the superior star rank to crush her and win. Hearing this, the captain sighed. All right, forget about those impossible things. So what is the most feasible plan you intend to carry out? I was just about to tell you about that method. That's why I need your help. Additionally, to ensure absolute safety, we need the support of Felon as well. He looked at him in silence for a moment, then grumbled. You kid, are you planning an extremely risky scheme instead of a feasible one? The protagonist replied calmly. In reality, the nature of this task is already fraught with danger, sir. Felon, standing nearby, shouted drunkenly. That's right, incredibly dangerous. Those terrible guys are all scammers. I got scammed by them for a painful amount. They cleared out every last coin. Boo-hoo. The old man was speechless and didn't know what to say. Just take it and use it. Scene shift to the afternoon at the Alent family mansion. Derek was slowly explaining everything. First, we will start the lesson with practical combat. Basically, this content will be repeated 10 times. After that step, I will begin to dive into the details of the magic. Alent was slightly surprised. You're suddenly making me spar for 10 rounds in a row. I need to carefully observe your practical abilities first, my lady. Alent looked at him and smiled. That is certainly the style of someone from the Mercenaries. Very crude. But fine, I didn't hire you just to listen to old, stuffy history lessons. Derek rolled up his sleeves, his hands beginning to gather surging magical power. Then, I shall begin. Both practiced until sunset, the training floor covered in cracks and fractures. Alent panted with fatigue, sweat dripping down her forehead. Derek stepped forward slowly. You've worked hard, my lady. Now rest for about 10 minutes, then we will summarize the basic magical knowledge. Hearing this, Alent was shocked. What? Only 10 minutes? I don't even have a drop of mana left to use anymore. He didn't care and continued. If you try to gather your strength, you will definitely still have some. This isn't the standard form of the fire spear anymore. Focus your mind intensely and create 10 more ice spears for me. Huh, even more. Derek closed his eyes slightly. If you can't even do that much, what else can you accomplish? You're still missing 5. Next, output 100 mana arrows for me. I really don't have any more magic power. Instead of wasting time making excuses, you should focus on creating 1 more arrow. After fulfilling all of Derek's requests, Alent lay flat on the ground, gasping for air. Her body felt as limp as if she had been jogging all day. He walked over slowly. You've worked hard all morning, you can go and have dinner now. His eyes narrowed as he continued. Are you still okay, my lady? If you feel like you can't endure it anymore, giving up is also an option. Hearing those provocative words made Alent sit up abruptly. Damn it. Huh, on the very first day you want me to give up? You clearly made a lot of threats before starting the lesson. I thought you would be harsh, but it turns out it's just doing hard labor. Perhaps you don't know what I've had to go through just to survive in this social circle full of scandals in Belstein. These trivial things, to me, they're just child's play. Derek nodded to let it pass. Oh, is that so? Perhaps I have underestimated you, my lady. Hearing this, the red-haired girl stood up and said, I'm just a little tired today because I just returned from a social party. Starting tomorrow, I will show you my true capabilities. Therefore, starting tomorrow, you should increase the intensity of the training to be even more rigorous. This gentle level isn't enough to make me feel anything at all. Hearing this, Derek looked confused. Tomorrow? What does the young lady mean by that? The smile on Alent's lips suddenly vanished. Huh. Derek looked straight at her, his gaze filled with seriousness. Didn't I already inform you? Right now is just our break for dinner. The atmosphere between the two suddenly froze. Alent couldn't believe her ears and asked, Ha ha, you're quite a joker, aren't you? I didn't take this job to joke around with you, my lady. Time quickly passed until the next day, and the male lead's voice rang out again. All right, my lady. Please continue to try a little harder. This is the last time. Please just create exactly 5 more magic arrows for me. Alent gritted her teeth, her body trembling with exhaustion. Derek continued to encourage her. There is still a bit of magical energy left in your body, my lady. I want to see 10 more arrows. Alent complained immediately. Why does the required amount keep increasing like this? A while later, the two switched to physical training. If you feel like you can't run anymore, we'll move on to training your mana release. Alent was gasping for breath but still tried to refuse. Running. I'm running right here. After the grueling workout, she collapsed onto the chair as if she were about to faint, her face pale and drained of all color. Derek walked over to her side and sat down. Are you still okay, my lady? It's actually quite interesting. Seeing her trying so hard, the male lead advised her. If you truly feel it's too much, giving up is also an option you should consider. Alent smiled. Who would want to surrender? I can handle this trivial little thing easily. He looked at her with a thoughtful expression, but said nothing. If that's the case, it seems you have rested enough. Let's begin the duel. Alent's expression was surprised. What? I've only just managed to lay my back down to sit. Time flew by until 2 weeks later. Alent arrived at the ladies' gathering in an exhausted state. She slumped her head onto the table. Lady Denise, I remember Lady Alina is stopping by. Please wake me up, will you? Yes, I understand, the other girl replied. Alent said in a weary voice, Thank you very much. I've been so busy with magic training lately that I haven't had a single moment of free time. Denise spoke up calmly. The thing is, I have a small question I want to ask you. Why are you pushing yourself to that extent? Alent was silent for a moment, trying to organize her thoughts. It's all to win the victory, simply because I truly want to win. Denise was momentarily stunned by her response, but quickly smiled. Then please keep striving. I will definitely always support Lady Alent. Suddenly someone approached, causing her to turn her head. Alina and 2 others were chatting happily nearby. Denise hurried to call Alent. My lady, Lady Alina has arrived. Alent sat up with a start. She awkwardly and quickly smoothed back her messy hair, but every action was captured by Alina's gaze. On the other side, the chatter of the other young ladies echoed. I heard there's a new fashion boutique that just opened. Shall we go there and check it out? Oh, sure. Let's go, let's go. Alina looked up at Denise and asked, Are they gone? Yes, they have left. Alent sighed in relief. They didn't see me, right? Me just lying there like that. Denise replied in a flat voice, Probably not. Alina turned back to look. So our father has. Alina looked worried, beads of sweat appearing. Lady Alent looks very exhausted. Is she really all right? The mansion was submerged in the bleak atmosphere of the fatting evening. A maid was brushing Alent's hair in front of the mirror. My lady, there is a gift sent from the Duplain family. Alent glanced sideways. Duplain. A wooden box containing vials of restorative potions, and a letter lay on the table. The maid said happily, It looks like it was sent by Lady Alina. All of these are items that help restore magical energy. These fine items will surely be of great help to you, my lady. Alent coldly interrupted. Throw it away. The maid was startled and dropped the comb. What was that? Alent turned away, her gaze indifferent. Throw it all away. Don't let them be an eyesore to me anymore. The maid bowed her head obediently. Yes, I understand. Alent sat firmly in front of the mirror, preparing to continue. Has Derek arrived? Yes, he arrived early this morning. He is currently preparing, my lady. Scene change. A letter lay neatly on the table addressed to the dear young ladies of Salon Roja. Winter is approaching, and it won't be long before white snow begins to fall. In this cold winter, is everyone doing well? It is quite a coincidence that our territory has just produced many high-quality products. I wanted to share them with you, dear ladies, so I sent them here. Hope today will be a peaceful day. From Alina. Derek sat quietly reading a book in the courtyard under the gray sky. He closed the book gently, glancing indifferently to the side as someone approached. Derek spoke, You've arrived early, Lady Alent. Alent replied, There's no time for such empty pleasantries. What is your assessment? Derek was bewildered. What do you mean? Alent stretched to relax and looked straight at him, serious. You must know clearly. Several weeks have passed since the training began. Be honest with me, what do you think of me? Derek pursed his lips and sank into silence. He spoke in an even tone. Giving up is also a good strategy. Alent paused, turned sharply to stare at him in silence. Why do you keep provoking me like that? If it sounded like that, I apologize. Alent pointed straight at him and snapped. What? Give up? You're telling me that? How can I do that? How can I defeat Alina? Isn't that the reason I hired you? I didn't hire you to come here and hear you tell me to give up. Derek turned his face away, deep in thought. Alent angrily waved her hand. If you're going to say such nonsense, get lost. You're only wasting my time. Derek calmly asked back. Then what if you cannot win? Being overly obsessed with victory can actually hinder your growth. Sometimes one should humbly accept defeat. Alent was streaming with tears. If that's the case, then I am truly pathetic. Derek stood there silently watching her. Alent continued to pour out her heart. I already told you I am just a petty, shameful person who specializes in talking badly about Alina. The pillar of the Belmiard family, the flower of Salon Roja. I am nothing. I am just a small-minded and envious person. I accept that. Everything. I admit how lacking and pathetic I am. I take it all. She turned her back, her shoulders trembling. I have admitted everything. There is no reason to hate Alina. I know that well too. But why? Why won't this base inferiority complex of mine disappear? Why in the end is it like this? Her words reminded the male lead of a scene from not long ago. I want you to understand how serious I am. Even if I have to expose my most shameful sides, I have a few things I want to ask you. Alent always carried a secret self-loathing within her. What do I need to do to defeat a leaner? Initially, Derek thought it was just jealousy or a competitive spirit. But what this girl truly hated was not a leaner, but herself. Alent clutched her sleeves to her chest, tears rolling down. This battle did not stem from a shallow jealousy. It was the only escape for her to break free from her self-loathing and inferiority complex. Derek stepped forward and spoke decisively. Then let us win. I will ensure you defeat Lady Alena. Alent looked up and whispered, okay. The scene switched to a carriage rolling across a vast rice field. As the destination appeared before them, the horse finally slowed to a stop. The door opened and the bald mage slowly stepped down. We have arrived. He looked ahead of him. That was the territory and the mansion of Count Belmere. From inside the castle, a middle-aged man walked out happily and said, how was it? Was the trip to Belstein all right? The old professor bowed respectfully. Are you still in good health, Count? He smiled and replied, it must have been exhausting traveling such a long way. Come inside and rest. He was the lord of the Belmere region, Tristan Anel's Belmere. The two quickly entered the guest room and chatted. How long has it been since I last saw my dear Alent? While you were there, was she doing well? Yes, my lord. Lately the young lady has been working hard on her magic training. The count laughed, satisfied. Ha ha, I haven't seen any young lady with as much talent as my Alent. With that ability, surely she will surpass me soon. The old professor bowed his head, deep in thought. Ha ha, I hope so too. I absolutely cannot let him know the young lady is learning with a commoner. If that gets out, both I and Lady Alent will be in big trouble. Oh, that's right, I have some business to attend to in Belstein soon. Hearing this made him startle in a panic. Yes. The count stroked his beard, calculating. If I were to suddenly appear and give her a surprise gift, how would she react? The professor smiled awkwardly. Ha ha, surely the young lady would be very happy. He thought to himself, I don't know if I can survive this part. The scene switched to the outskirts of Belstein, a dungeon maze. Felon stepped forward, his voice filled with suspicion. I still feel like something is off. Is it really okay to bring such a fragile young lady into a dungeon? Beldern put his hands on his hips and answered calmly. I'm sure Derek has it all planned out. Alent pointed at herself in anxiety. Wait, you mean I have to go into that dungeon? Me? Derek glanced over and reassured her. This is the lowest level dungeon in this region. It won't be anything difficult. Even so, what can I do in there? Are we just going to charge straight in? You need to hone your instincts through actual combat. To be safe, my colleague and I will stay close behind. Hearing this, Alent was still incredibly bewildered. Are you serious? You're joking, right? There are only a few days left until the duel. Time is running out. This is the most optimal method. Having said that, Derek activated his magic and entered the maze, leaving Alent still wavering, not knowing whether to continue or stop. The four of them quickly walked along the dark and damp corridor. Fear made Alent's face pale. She stared at the grotesque things on the walls and wondered, what on earth is that over there? Derek did not answer. He only warned, be prepared. Even if it is the lowest tier dungeon, you must be extremely vigilant. His seriousness only made the atmosphere more tense. Alent backed away without saying another word. Suddenly, Felon discovered something. Derek, a pack of goblins is heading this way. Alent hid behind everyone in a panic. Huh, goblins? Derek replied calmly. Yes, I hear them. Beldern lit a torch and warned further. Derek, there's a big one behind them. It looks like an ogre. Alent froze. An ogre. Derek probed, can you handle that ogre? Beldern answered cheerfully. Depends on how much extra pay we get. Derek added the closing remark. We can discuss the expenses later. A frenzied, angry roar echoed from the dark corridor. Alent muttered, trembling, are they actually going to fight? Monsters. Two green goblins came charging forward, screaming. Derek lunged straight ahead and delivered a slash. Alent stood outside, eyes wide, completely shocked. Derek was wielding his sword and quickly warned, Felon, protect the young lady. Behind him, Felon had his bow ready. Derek agilely slashed a goblin that was about to ambush them. Felon released his bowstring decisively, the arrow striking straight into the monster's skull. Derek swung his glowing blue sword high. A horizontal slash swept past, splitting the goblin's body in two. Turning around, Derek released a burst of flaming magic. The goblin, engulfed in the flames, burned violently in midair. The next strike pierced straight from under the jaw into the skull of another monster. Felon fired another arrow through the head of a goblin that just poked its head out. Alent remained rooted to the spot, gasping with her mouth wide open. The roar echoed again close by, making her panic to the extreme. The giant red-eyed monster appeared, towering over Beldern. Standing before the beast, Beldern laughed in excitement. "Let me see how high the reward is for your head." The ogre roared and brought its massive fist down. Beldern swung his giant sword and delivered a clean, smooth cut to its wrist. The monster's arm was severed and flew into the air. Elen stood frozen, muttering, "What is happening?" Her mind couldn't process the shock. He really killed the goblin. "My brain is about to explode. I might die here. This is insane. I can't do this." A roar close to her ear made her jump in fright. Derek shouted a warning, "My lady, a goblin is charging at you. Stay focused." A goblin came scuttling forward, intent on ambushing her from behind. Elen stood still, unable to react, tears streaming down. "I'm going to die. I'm really going to die." Derek stood aside, arms crossed, and shouted in a stern voice, "You have to defeat it yourself." Elen looked stunned, as if waking from a trance. "My entire life." She remembered the words from before, then collapsed to the ground, admitting the bitter truth. "Yes, I admit it. I know full well how pathetic and naive I have been." Clutching her chest and sobbing, Elen tormented herself. "Why won't this feeling of misery and humiliation go away? Why? I've always been all talk and no action." A goblin holding a mace dragged itself toward where she was sitting. Elen's internal monologue began to evaluate herself. "Someone who only knows how to be jealous of others and badmouth them behind their backs. That is exactly who I am." Suddenly, she looked up with a slightly unstable smile, her eyes shifting into a gaze blazing with murderous intent. "I am here to put an end to that version of myself, to become a better person." She stretched out her hand, gathering a stream of neon green mana as a blinding green lance of light materialized. Elen charged straight ahead, while the scuttling goblin leaped up, intending to ambush her. Derek, who had been watching the performance the whole time, suddenly narrowed his eyes. In the blink of an eye, the monster was skewered through the chest by the lance. Beldern watched in silence. Felon, holding his bow, didn't say a word either. The creature's carcass slumped down behind her. Elen knelt down, panting and utterly exhausted, yet her eyes looked incredibly determined. Derek stood watching her as she sat in the middle of the battlefield. He gave a slight nod, the cold young man's praise. "This is just the beginning." Elen smiled confidently. "No, at last I am finally moving forward." Outside the mysterious labyrinth, the atmosphere remained as gloomy as ever, with white light illuminating everything within the darkness. In contrast, inside, Derek was leisurely reading his letter. "Dear Derek, it has been over 2 years, hasn't it, since the day I left Belstein. I apologize for being so slow in contacting you. I am currently teaching magic to the young lady of the Count Elvester family. The girl is eager to learn, keeping me busy with everything I have to teach. I remember the days I walked the streets of Belstein and taught you magic. Even though life was a bit difficult, it was much more free and fun. Among all the mages I have met in my life, Derek, you are the most talented. What level have you reached now? If there is an opportunity to meet again, do show me your magic. Your old teacher, Keisha Flameheart." Derek stared intently at the letter for a long time without saying a word. Beside him, Alent saw this and asked, "I've been here for 2 weeks, and every time I'm free, I see you buried in reading that thing. Can I finally ask what it is?" Derek slowly folded the letter and replied, "It is a letter from my old teacher." Hearing this, Alent felt interested. "Wow, she must be a wonderful teacher. If she had the patience to teach a kid like you, she really is amazing." Derek, not fully understanding, replied calmly, "She truly is exceptional." His answer left Alent frozen for a few seconds. Was he being sarcastic? Where? "Oh, forget it, it's nothing." He put the letter in his pocket and spoke. "In 2 days, the match is coming up, right? How are you feeling?" "Feelings? I'm not really sure about that." She turned to look at him and smiled brightly. "I just know that this time, I absolutely must defeat her." The scene shifts 2 days later, to the magical arena in the noble district, where the atmosphere is incredibly lively. Elena, as always, is surrounded by many other young ladies. Suddenly, her gaze rests on someone. In the crowd of nobles, a familiar silhouette just flashed by, catching her attention. Elena bowed slightly to those around her. "Please excuse me for a moment." She ran toward Derek and called out loudly, Mr. Derek, it is so good to see you again." He also bowed politely. "Long time no see, my lady." Elena continued, asking eagerly, "I heard you are providing magical support for Lady Alent, is that right?" Derek bowed slightly in acknowledgement. "Yes, it was just a chance encounter." Their conversation suddenly fell into silence. Elena tilted her head in confusion, exclaiming, "Mr. Derek is still the same, isn't he? Aren't you being too strict with Lady Alent?" Diella once said, "Mr. Derek is no ordinary teacher." Lately, Lady Alent looks quite exhausted. Hearing that response left Derek feeling a bit puzzled. She's worried about her opponent like this. "You're quite confident, aren't you?" Derek looked at her seriously and offered some truly useful advice. No matter who the opponent is, don't be overly complacent. Alina was slightly stunned by the tension he created. A moment later, the duel finally arrived. On the stands, the young ladies were chatting incessantly about the outcome. So who do you think will win? Obviously, Lady Alina, unless Lady Alent can use second-level magic. I feel so sorry for Lady Alent. Her face looks so haggard. From below the floor, Alina walked up slowly with her usual elegance. Oh my, here comes Lady Alina. Wow, she's as beautiful as ever today. On the other side of the arena, Alent stepped steadily onto the field, muttering to herself, I must win. I absolutely must win. She stared intently at her opponent, her determination rising. I have to win. Below the stands, Derek was also observing his student carefully. And just like that, both contestants were present in the arena. Alina bowed politely. Are you well, Lady Alent? Alent returned the gesture with a smile. Are you well too, Lady Alina? Your calm demeanor is truly a good example for me. But unexpectedly, Alina denied it. Not at all. I have never had a match that excited me as much as this one. Both looked straight at each other. Then let's begin. To be honest, I've been looking forward to this match too. Alent's hand began to gather flaming red fire magic. On the other side, Alina created magic that felt more refined and skillful. The entire arena was suddenly occupied by the two sources of energy, and the air became tense. Alent began to release her mana and chant. Countless magical arrows were created in the sky. Alina's eyes widened in surprise. Before her now was a rain of arrows obscuring the vast sky. Alent was overflowing with determination. She remembered the instructions Derek had given her earlier inside the dungeon. If they fought with pure magical skill, she couldn't win. So what should I do? How can I win? Derek wiped a drop of blood from his face and answered clearly. Willpower. The way to drain mana to the final limit. You've already learned that from me. Huh. Isn't torturing me your hobby? I don't have such strange hobbies. If both exhaust their mana, the result will be decided by willpower, not skill. Cast the most magnificent and powerful magic possible. Prolong the match into a war of attrition. When the war of attrition ends, whoever can squeeze out more mana, even just a single drop, will be the winner. That made Alent wonder. But what if Alina's mana pool is much larger than mine? He answered bluntly, then you will lose. Most of the mana amount is innate talent. And Lady Alina possesses the bloodline of the Belmeard family. That is why you must place your faith in yourself. Alina, on the opposite side, was still in shock. Is Lady Alent really this talented? Alent raised her arm high, ready for a powerful preemptive attack. A storm of missiles flew toward Alina, but she quickly regained her composure and cast her magic. But regardless of that, I must still win. Both pairs of eyes met in midair. The determination was undeniable. I absolutely cannot lose this battle. Fire and water continued to clash violently, neither yielding to the other. The crowd cheered as if watching a circus. Is that Lady Alent's magic? Her mana output seems to be increasing exponentially. Alina stood within her perfectly safe shield. She calculated in her head, the firepower is terrifying, but she is burning mana too quickly. At this rate, she will run out soon. Suddenly, Alina jolted as she realized a blind spot. Alent had circled behind her like a ghost. Found you. Alina reacted instantly. My turn, Lady Alent. She fired a freezing cold water lance in a straight line, rushing toward Alent. But unexpectedly, it was just an illusion to create a distraction. Alina's eyes rounded in surprise. The truth came out as the figure vanished. An illusion spell. Alina was bewildered. Manipulating illusions like that, it consumes a tremendous amount of mana. Alent appeared right behind Alina with a dazzling ice lance. Alina stiffened, unable to react in time. The memory flashed back to the carriage. Derek concluded blandly, it will be blocked. Alent looked confused. Huh. Derek lectured blandly. Obscure the vision with fire missiles, then use an illusion to bait, then close in and fire the ice lance at close range. He finished calmly. Even a seasoned mage would lower their guard and fall into the trap, but your opponent is no ordinary mage. In the actual event, Alent was holding the ice lance, rushing forward. Alina glanced back, calculating. An ice lance from this distance. She made the decision that there was no time to chant a protection spell. If so, she immediately turned to the left to accumulate mana, while Alent was still aggressively rushing toward her. Alent didn't hesitate, thrusting the ice spear straight toward Alina. As fast as lightning, Alina successfully gathered a dazzling orb of mana. She released that mana stream to create a propulsion force, smoothly pushing herself backward to dodge the blow. Alent's attack missed its target, slamming straight into the ground. Alina landed safely, sliding a distance but maintaining her composure. Alent broke out in a cold sweat, extremely bewildered. What was that? Alina's figure appeared imposingly from the smoke. Looking calm, Alina was also sweating. That was close, I almost died. Derek's warning suddenly popped into her head. No matter who the opponent is, never lower your guard. Alina admitted, Now I understand what Derek meant. Watching tensely, her assessment of everything about her had changed, from her skills to the way she manipulated mana. Under Alina's feet, the mana fluctuated, forming gentle ripples. She calculated, then I will respond with pure firepower. I can win this exchange. A few ice lances began to rise from the ground around Alina. With a snap, a giant rain of ice lances pointed straight to the sky, ready to strike. The crowd in the stands gasped and buzzed. Whoa, are those all ice lances? Creating so many without chanting. Derek stood leaning against a pillar, maintaining his look as an outsider. Glancing over the situation, he blandly dropped a line. She took the bait. Below the arena, Alent gritted her teeth, waving her hand to control the firepower. I admit that Lady Alina's progress is truly astonishing. Meanwhile, Alent secretly channeled a brilliant stream of mana, hiding it behind her back. From the sun, an arrow appeared. Alina released the entire rain of ice lances forward, shouting, "But try blocking this as well." Alent looked up to face the deafening firepower, her eyes sharp and fearless. Alent secretly channeled mana, controlling the fire arrow hidden from before. From the scorching sun, the arrow dived straight down. Suddenly, Alina stopped, her sixth sense ringing alarm bells. She startled, turning her head back, only to see the fire arrow Alent had hidden all this time had completely wiped out the entire array of ice lances. She had gone through the trouble of summoning. Alina's eyes widened in shock as she panicked, questioning herself. When did she create this fire arrow? She clearly hadn't sensed her opponent casting any spells or felt any mana fluctuations. Alina suddenly remembered something and wondered, could it be from that moment? It turned out Alent had set a trap for this arrow from the very beginning. Alina broke out into a cold sweat, admitting to herself that she couldn't read Alent's movements and was completely clueless about her opponent's next step. Below the stage, the crowd buzzed because the two were so evenly matched. Denise Laveltis watched calmly, silently acknowledging that the match was actually pretty good. Alent was fired up, telling herself she was truly engaging in a fair combat with Alina. Conversely, Alina gritted her teeth, concluding that she couldn't win if things remained as they were. In terms of recklessness and strategy, Lady Alent was truly one step ahead. Alina tightened her grip on her clothes, taking a deep breath to regain her composure. She exhaled and decided, I've decided to reset the game back to the starting line. Derek stood with his arms crossed on the sidelines, with his usual emotionless expression. He commented indifferently, the real battle is only just beginning. Alina began to channel her power, and her entire body released a massive stream of mana that lit up the entire corner of the sky. Alent was itching to make her move. Alina's mana surged into a storm that swept straight forward. Alent had to raise her hands to cover her face against the terrifying pressure, wondering, where did this windstorm come from? Sensing more carefully, Alent was alarmed to realize this wasn't magic, but pressure from pure mana. The aura generated by Alina forced Alent to struggle and retreat. Wind? Why is there a wind all of a sudden? If it was magic. Suddenly, the entire space became strangely quiet. Alent looked around in anxiety. All the mana in the surrounding environment has disappeared in the blink of an eye. Mana restructuring, a phenomenon where ambient mana automatically readjusts instantly when faced with an overwhelming source of mana. From Alina's hand, a small fireball appeared, then quickly swelled into a giant sphere of fire floating in midair. Alent broke into a cold sweat, retreating. This is, Derek calmly assessed, speaking briefly. Lady Alina has surpassed her own limits. This attack is a 2-star fireball. Turning back to the previous training session, Alent lay on the ground, panting heavily from exhaustion. Derek walked over and handed her a water bottle. Drink some water. Ah, thank you. Alent sighed and spoke. Honestly, Derek, I'm not even sure anymore. With just a few short weeks of training like this, can I really defeat Alina? Derek smiled lightly and replied, you will win, my lady, to be more precise. Yes, you will certainly win. Back in the present, the other young ladies realized in horror. Could that really be a 2-star fireball? No way. The entire arena was covered in terrifying heat. Alent panicked and retreated. Why a fireball right at this moment? Wait, this wasn't in the original plan. She glanced toward Derek as if to plead for help. What is this? What am I supposed to do now? His expression remained as aloof as ever, silently observing without saying a word. Alent almost screamed on the verge of tears. Stop wearing that blank face and tell me what to do, you bastard. The giant fireball surged toward her while she was still in chaos. Alent cried out in fear. What should I do? Defensive magic. How can I block that 2-star fireball? Use ice spear. Her eyes were fixed on her opponent. That won't work. Just as I thought, defeating Alina is impossible. How could someone like me? But in the life or death moment, she still created a mana orb and used the elastic force to push herself backward, dodging the attack. Alina stared in astonishment, unable to believe what was happening. A massive explosion erupted, engulfing the entire stage. The pressure blew Alent far away. Her body slid across the floor, eventually coming to a tense halt right at the edge of the arena. Elena was gasping, her arm trembling from the sheer amount of mana consumed. Alent struggled to crawl up through the dense smoke, which only made Elena more horrified. Lady Alent, she dodged it, and she even used the same technique I used. Derek thought to himself, truly immature. She tried to force a 2-star spell when she wasn't qualified. Doing that is no different than burning through all her own mana. But then he smiled slightly. Lady Elena has truly acknowledged Lady Alent's talent, which is why she is pouring out all her power now. This is the respect for a worthy opponent, someone who has put in their all to stand at this position today. Alent wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, her lips curling slightly. I understand what you mean, Derek. If I can stand firm through this attack, I will win. Elena gathered her very last bit of mana to create another fireball. She gritted her teeth with determination, then threw the spell directly at Alent decisively. The brown-haired girl in the stands worried. Another fireball. It seems to be flying much faster this time. Alent ran around the arena, trying to find an opening to dodge. Elena clenched her hand, trying to control the fireball to follow Alent's path. As the fireball surged right beside her, Alent braced her hands against the ground and leaped high, dodging the critical strike by a hair's breadth. Her body hung suspended in space. The sunlight made it impossible for Elena to clearly see Alent's counterattack. She smiled with satisfaction, then quickly created an ice arrow and fired it downward. How can I predict its trajectory like this? Using a shield now would just waste more mana. Well, what will you do now? Elena slumped to the ground, trying to create an ice wall to block it. Alent thought to herself, that isn't defensive magic, just a mana discharge. She's completely out of mana after creating those 2 fireballs. She responded decisively, her confident gaze glowing. Opposite her, Elena was so dizzy she was nearly fainting from mana exhaustion. Her legs couldn't even stand steadily anymore. Derek observed and judged. It's almost over. Alent slowly advanced with surging excitement. I did it. I've backed Elena into a corner. She doesn't have a drop of mana left, while I still have enough mana to use a fire bolt or at least 2 more ice spears. I'm definitely going to win this time. But just then, from behind Elena's flimsy shield, one last fireball appeared. The attack carried every last bit of her remaining mana. Alent's eyes widened in surprise. The fireball shattered the shield, threw Elena backward and lunged straight toward Alent. Elena was knocked to the ground by the residual force. However, the attack veered off course at the last second, grazing Alent before flying straight into the sky. Alent stood silently, watching with much contemplation. Elena struggled to stand, her entire body trembling uncontrollably, her arm holding only a faint flicker of mana. She whispered in desperation, "Please, just one more time, just a little more." Alent watched her opponent intently. Her gaze remained calm, while in Elena's eyes, one last flicker of hope remained as her meager mana surfaced. The scene shifted to Alent's past memories. Frankly, there isn't a single young lady in all of Belstein nobler than Elena. However, wherever there is radiant light, shadows must exist. And that dark corner is the very position I have always occupied for so long. I have always just been a shadow chasing that brilliant light. Alent had used every trick to belittle Elena but failed. After all, she was a precious young lady who had been pampered since childhood. Stabbed in the back like this, does she think I'm any different? Turn around and look at me. Try throwing a pathetic tantrum for me to see. But when Elena turned, there was no anger there at all, only a smile as clear as morning sunlight on her lips. She was like a precious gem, shining more brilliantly the more she was polished. And that light was so blinding it left me completely eclipsed, sinking deep into the abyss of inferiority. Yet I never stopped silently sharpening my blade in that darkness. There will come a day when I will definitely surpass her, to prove my own worth at all costs. And then I will escape from this empty pit. That much is certain. Back in reality, Elena was collapsing on the arena floor from exhaustion. Alent still had enough mana for 2 more attacks. She observed carefully and thought, Elena is elegant and beautiful, even with her hair disheveled and covered in mud like that. Even after rolling on the ground in front of so many people, how can she still maintain such a calm expression? It seems she has no image she feels compelled to maintain. Right, she is always like that, only knowing how to do her best at everything before her. In the stands, countless cheers erupted. Lady Elena, keep going. You can definitely do it. Stand up, my lady. Alent slowly manifested magic in her palm. Her eyes glanced toward Derek, who was watching. Can I truly defeat Elena? His voice rang out clearly in her mind. The young lady will certainly win. But then everything around Alent vanished, leaving only an endless void. Is it finally over? Will I escape this abyss right here? But then those black tentacles pulled Alent down into the water once again. No, even if I win this match, I'll be stuck here forever in the end. Opposite her, Elena was trying to squeeze out every last drop of mana. Suddenly, Elent stepped forward and spoke. Ah, that's too bad. I'm all out of mana. How can I continue to fight? Elena was bewildered, confused by her actions. Ha! Elent stepped forward and bowed her head slightly. You truly are Lady Elena. I really can't compete with you. I surrender. That was a wonderful match. The entire stand seemed to erupt in cheers. Wow, Lady Elena is amazing. The two of them looked at each other in silence. Elent gave a faint smile, while Elena appeared full of indescribable confusion. After the match concluded, countless young ladies swarmed around Elena to offer congratulations. Congratulations, Lady Elena. Since when did you learn second-level magic? That match was so impressive. Suddenly, Elena's gaze caught someone. In the distance, Elent was slowly walking down from the arena. She walked up in front of Derek, who was reading a book, and spoke softly. Well, did you see it clearly? That's enough. She excitedly recounted. Surprisingly, right? I'm someone who knows how to accept defeat too. You really should have seen the look on Elena's face. Derek asked curiously, how did she look? Elent continued. Her jaw hit the floor. What do you think? It was like she was about to give up right there. It was written all over her face. Elena is usually so calm. Who knew she could make a face like that? It's hilarious. Losing but getting to see that sight made it all worth it. Thanks a lot. Thanks to you, I felt like I had the upper hand when battling Elena. I'm in a fantastic mood today. So what do you think of me? The ending was a bit regrettable, but not bad, right? I think I'm a fast learner, don't you? Stop standing there analyzing me. As she finished speaking, teardrops unexpectedly began to roll down Elent's cheeks. Huh. She looked at her palm with confusion. What is this? Why am I crying? Elent sat down heavily and sobbed. What is this? I'm not a child anymore. Derek spoke up, gently comforting her. You did an impeccable job, my lady. You've worked hard. The atmosphere suddenly fell silent, and neither of them said a word. And then Elent broke the stifling silence with a reply. Actually, I really wanted to win. But you know, when I was about to unleash my final attack, I realized something. Even if I won this time, I would still be stuck in the same place. I would just have to return to that miserable place again. Yes, that is just the kind of person I am. At that moment, Elena still looked so high and mighty. In terms of this inferiority complex, I think I've definitely beaten Elena. Derek replied calmly, I am no different from you, my lady. So what if you're a bit pathetic? If you don't have the courage to be pathetic, you can never improve. Regardless, you gave it your all. The result isn't that important. Only the two of them remained in the hallway as the sun set. Elent seemed to have dropped her burden. But at any rate, I don't feel trapped anymore today. In the distance, Lady Denise had seen it all. She watched quietly as if trying to understand something. After the surrounding guests departed, Denise walked over slowly to congratulate her. We'll be taking our leave now, Lady Elena. Today's match was truly excellent. Thank you all. Denise smiled lightly and spoke. Lady Elena has had another brilliant success. Watching you compete gave me goosebumps. Hearing this, Elena wasn't happy at all and replied. Lady Denise, you know it too, don't you? Regarding this match, the true winner was not me. Denise bowed her head with a smile. She neither agreed nor denied it. Elena observed her intently, waiting for a sincere comment. But Denise's answer was exactly the same as everyone else's. In terms of magical skill, I find Lady Elena far better than me. Elena narrowed her eyes, thinking, that's not it. There is something that can even compensate for that gap in skill. Lady Elena surpassed me in every aspect. The fact that she improved so rapidly in such a short time was that all thanks to him. Elena lifted her head, her eyes filled with determination as if she already had her answer. She whispered to her servant, Daisy, yes, my lady. I need to send a letter to the main mansion for the family head. Get it prepared quickly. Derek, I want to have Mr. Derek by my side. The scene shifts back to the Duke's mansion. He held the letter in his hand and sighed. Dressed Wolfdal, why would a sixth-level old man travel all the way to Belstein? His eldest son replied, I'm not yet clear on the reason, but it seems the tariff agreement was pushed up to deal with Mr. Drest's movements. The Duke pondered, I've been wondering why Marquis Belmeard was so determined to come to Belstein. It seems this matter is related to Old Man Drest. A master of high-level magic, someone who possesses clairvoyance, he must certainly have some purpose. Valerian said calmly, Father, I also just received a letter from Elena. She is asking us to help find a magic tutor. He looked up indifferently. Just find someone for the girl. But Valerian quickly refused. The problem is she specifically named Derek, which is why a slight problem has arisen. Currently, Derek is at the Belmeard estate teaching magic to Lady Elena. The Duke pondered upon hearing this. Why don't you send the butler to negotiate aggressively? But he immediately rejected the idea. Forget it. In any case, I have to go to Belstein because of the Drest affair. so I will handle this matter personally when I am there. The scene shifts back to Lady Alent's mansion. She was sipping tea with Derek in the late afternoon. Derek, I intend to take a break for a while. I need to pause my studies and everything else for a moment, so I have time to organize my thoughts. You'll still be working for the Beldern Mercenary Group, right? Derek nodded slightly. Yes, of course. Unexpectedly, she kicked his leg. Derek. She leaned forward and observed him intently. A playful smile appeared on her face as Alent spoke. If I call, will you come back to me? I mean, to continue teaching me magic. Derek pondered for a moment and quickly answered, Of course, but I'm not sure if I have any knowledge left to pass on to you, my lady. Hearing this, Alent leaned back and teased. Come on, why are you suddenly being so modest? That's not like you at all. Well, winter is starting to fade, isn't it? A long winter, don't you think? Time quickly passed to the evening at the Beldern Mercenary Group. The door slowly opened, startling Felon, who had been lost in her gambling frenzy. She waved happily at the person who just entered. Derek looked at the familiar scene and smiled slightly. I'm home. The next morning, a carriage rolled straight toward the bustling city. Inside was Count Belmierd, who was incredibly excited. At her mansion, Alent was still fast asleep after saying goodbye to Derek. Suddenly, a knock on the door made her uncomfortable. Oh my, what is this? I already said I'm resting today. I'm taking the day off from outside lessons. The maid explained slowly. My lady, I think you should go out and see for yourself. Alent stepped out of bed wearily and dragged herself toward the door. Why, I already said to just tell them I'm not home. Honestly. When the door opened, Alent sighed. Are you not listening to me? From today I will. In front of her was Count Belmierd, smiling excitedly. Oh, Alent, it's been a long time since we've seen each other, hasn't it? My pride, my treasure, my precious gem. Before he could finish his sentence, the door slammed shut coldly. Alent panicked, thinking, why is father here? She opened the door slightly and smiled. Ha ha, what brings you all the way here, father? Wait for me to change and I'll be right out. Please wait a moment. The door closed again, despite the Count muttering to himself. Oh, my darling, the apple of my eye. A moment later, the two were sitting and talking about what had just happened. A lady of the Duplain family is certainly not an easy opponent. Alent replied awkwardly. Yes, but thanks to that, I've learned quite a lot. Is that so? If that mercenary is teaching you so well, perhaps we should just keep him at the Belmierd house permanently. Alent froze in silence, but immediately replied, But the subordinates will surely object. The Count laughed heartily. Ha ha ha, don't worry, is there anything father can't do for you? Just trust me. Alent's face clearly showed her excitement. This was clearly what she wanted most. Scene shift back to the monster dungeon. Derek was hunting monsters with Felon as usual. She turned around and shouted a warning. Derek, behind you. A goblin lunged to attack Derek from behind, but he had already detected it. When he turned to counterattack, the flow of mana suddenly changed into a strange red color. Derek's eyes were full of surprise, thinking, this sensation is. He aimed the ball of mana directly at the goblin. Third level star. Derek's eyes widened in focus, activating a fire wall spell. Instantly, the dungeon was covered in a blinding light. Felon turned back anxiously and shouted, Derek. A shocking explosion shook the ground, and the birds in the forest flew away in terror. Time passed quickly until the afternoon. After finishing the hunt, both returned to the Beldern Mercenary Group. What? Derek almost lost his life. Felon sighed helplessly. Don't mention it. Goodness, are all mages like this? What were you thinking, using a third-level spell to hunt a goblin? Derek looked at his palm and answered. At that moment, I felt the coordination between the mana circuits go out of sync. It was just like the first time I reached the second level. Suddenly, a voice rang out from behind, making him turn around. Don't be impatient when you hit a limit. There's no need to force yourself to overcome it. Doesn't the wild school always aim for naturalness? But these kinds of tips probably won't mean much to a mage like you, right? Derek narrowed his eyes, thinking, I can't feel any mana radiating from him at all. Yet the person standing in front of me is definitely the first and greatest sixth-level adventurer mage. The wandering soul dressed wolftal. He slowly pulled his hat down and spoke. If you have some good wine, bring it out for me to have a few cups. I'm a bit tired from the long journey. Scene shift back to the Duke's mansion. Diella was trying hard to practice magic in the dark of night. Her eyes were determined. A magic arrow was summoned from the ground and gradually appeared. Diella clenched her hand, trying to summon even more magic arrows. But as the number increased, she began to lose control of them. The arrows began to crumble into pieces. Diella sat down on the ground and shouted, Ayla, what is going on? This is so frustrating. Valerian walked up from behind with a smirk. I thought you would be more mature now that you're older. Who would have thought your temperament would still be exactly the same? How long have you been standing there? Valerian tilted his head and commented. Even so, you've managed to control 5 of them, haven't you? Must be thanks to having a great teacher, right? Diella turned her face away and replied, "No, it's just because I'm doing well. What good is that selfish Derek?" Valerian walked closer and said, "I heard Alina is wanting to hire that arrogant guy to be a magic tutor for her." "What? No way. What if she has to suffer just like I did? Don't say things that make people misunderstand Derek like that." The other day at the dance, I heard faint whispers of this. It seems Lady Alent also wants to continue keeping Derek on. Diella sulked, thinking, why is that guy so popular? If he can turn a stubborn brat into a capable person, it's only natural he'd be famous. Huh, who is stubborn? Well, you were before. Her brother continued, if Derek chooses Alina, that would be fine too, right? Who knows, maybe thanks to that, you'll have a chance to see him again. That person named Derek you've been missing day and night. Diella's face immediately turned red with embarrassment. When did I miss him? Knowing his sister's personality, her brother didn't tease her anymore. Fine, fine, I'll just pretend I don't know. Good news travels fast. Surely everyone knows about him by now. Just hope no one else jumps in to compete for him. Evening at the Beldern Mercenary Group. The 6th-level Grand Mage was leisurely drinking a mug of beer. Derek glanced at him and thought, Dressed Wolfdal, such a high-caliber mage, why would he come to this remote place? Dressed set his mug down and spoke softly. Phew, your name is Derek, right? Derek was slightly surprised. Yes, that's me. He knows me, he wondered. The old man continued. If you don't mind, could we go somewhere else to talk for a moment? Just the two of us. Derek pondered for a moment and quickly agreed. The two stood up and left the mercenary group. Their footsteps echoed quietly in the night. Your magical talent is truly hard to predict. I'm sure you've never heard anyone say that before. Because your skills are truly exceptional. Why do you have to work this hard? What is the ultimate goal of learning this magic? Derek pondered for a moment before answering softly. I don't have any grand ambitions. It's just that once I realized I had some talent, I was simply curious to see how far I could go. Hearing those words, Drest smiled with satisfaction. As a commoner, if you want to step into a realm higher than your current one, your current abilities are still lacking. Do you want me to lend you a hand? I will help you attain things you have never had before. Derek's gaze was fixed on the 6th-tier mage, Drest Wolfdal. He came from humble origins, having reached the 2nd tier by the time he became an adult, and touching the 3rd tier when he had already started a family. This common-born mage had become a spiritual pillar for the laboring class, turning his village into a sanctuary for commoner mages. Then, in the very year he reached the 4th tier, a tragedy struck his family. When Drest returned home in a torrential downpour, all that awaited him were the corpses of his loved ones, murdered by a group of nobles. From that moment on, everything within the young mage completely collapsed, leaving behind only an intense, burning thirst for revenge. Those cruel nobles still did not know that a storm was coming for them. Has that Drest settled down yet? My lord, he has gone into hiding. Those arrogant commoner mages have also learned to fear and keep quiet. Truly low-born trash, they tuck their tails and run at the slightest threat. Honestly, what could those commoners possibly want with magic? He turned his head and smiled faintly, but that smile quickly faded, replaced by an encroaching terror. Before his eyes, his subordinate's head had been severed at some point. A death terrifyingly swift. The Count's voice cracked when he realized who stood before him. He scrambled to run away, but in the next second he no longer had legs. From his left to his right, they were severed one by one. The pain hadn't even reached his brain before his entire body slumped to the ground, dazed, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The Count crawled along the ground, his mouth screaming endlessly, Please, please spare my life. I know I was wrong, I truly apologize. But Drest no longer wished to hear anything else. He cleanly severed the man's tongue, silencing every sound. In the dim mansion, only the agonizing screams of the dying noble remained. Ever since that event, for 30 long years, he had lived a life on the run from the purges of the royals and nobility. But when Drest surpassed the 5th tier and officially became a 6th-tier mage, the royal family began to realize a critical truth. If they continued to treat Drest as an enemy, the kingdom would be in danger. The royal family finally had to admit that Drest's act of revenge was justified. They protected their own reputation by granting him a title. Thanks to this, Drest became the first person to hold a noble title based solely on pure magical talent. And now, am I being taught magic by someone like that? There was absolutely no reason for me to refuse this. Scene change to the Belstein Noble District, central meeting room of the Cleon Hall. Grand Duke Duplain. If you intend to expand your territory to the north of the Belkos Peninsula, you should leave some of the labyrinths in the White Zone alone. If you need me to, I can dispatch my knights to support you. The one who spoke was Grand Duke Veltus Anderlof Klopp. Duke Duplain continued reading his report and replied, Could those knights you just mentioned be those lowly mercenaries? Hearing this made Duke Veltus's face twist in annoyance. He retorted sharply, managing such a vast territory with only your private army must be quite difficult. Why don't you consider giving up some of your territory? Duke Duplain paused, their eyes locked, unyielding. Sensing the situation growing tense, Count Belmiard hurriedly intervened. Ha ha, it seems the meeting is coming to an end. Since you are passing through Belstein this time, why don't you visit your children? Duke Duplain turned to look at him. I heard your Lady Alent fought a very close match with Alina. Belmiard laughed heartily. Ah, it's a shame she still lost. But it seems Alent's talent has finally blossomed. With a good teacher guiding her, she will surely surpass Lady Alina. Hearing this, Count Belmiard removed his glasses. True, a good teacher. You mean that Derek fellow, don't you? Conversely, if he were to become Alina's teacher, Alent would never have a chance to surpass Alina. Seeing his beloved daughter being looked down upon, Count Belmiard showed blatant hostility. Ho ho, I wonder if that will happen, as the bond between him and Alent is already quite deep. Oh, you think he is the type of person who acts on personal feelings? You understand nothing of his character. Beside them, Duke Veltus wondered, who exactly is this Derek fellow that these two are competing so fiercely for? I must warn Denise to investigate his identity. Returning to the Beldern mercenary troop, Count Belmiard and his entourage arrived in person to find Derek. Greetings, valued guests. Beldern looked bewildered at the sudden arrival of the group. The Count rubbed his chin and spoke. You are the commander of this mercenary troop, aren't you? Afterward, the two quickly sat down to talk. Since I received no reply to my butler's letter, I came here myself. Beldern apologized. Oh, I am terribly sorry, but the situation is this. Actually, Derek has been missing for several days now. We are also scrambling to inquire and search for him everywhere. A few days ago, he announced he would decline all requests and then vanished without a trace. Vanished. Count Belmiard's face was lost in thought. Could old Duplain have snatched him up already? Or Veltus? No, there is no information on that yet. It seems I must find him myself. Scene changed to the outskirts of Belstein. At the mansion of Grand Duke Veltus, Denise was leisurely biting an apple and reading her father's letter. She asked her maid, when was this letter sent? It just arrived early this morning, my lady. They said the master sent it with great urgency. The content inside the letter read, find the person named Derek and invite him to be a tutor. I guess he's quite anxious, since the value of that mercenary is currently at its peak. She placed the letter down slowly and sighed. What a nuisance, honestly. Today is an extremely important day, a day I have been waiting for with such longing. The day the new work by the great novelist Rayleigh, The Lady Submits to the Cold Duke's Ice Greatsword, is finally officially released. What exactly is that ice greatsword? I am dying of curiosity. But what can I do? If I don't listen now, he's going to nag me even more. She stood up and called her maid. Bella, are you there? Yes, my lady, the maid replied. She requested, prepare my clothes, I'm going out. There is someone I absolutely must find. Inside a cave in a desolate ravine, Derek and Dressed were sitting silently practicing magic. The murmuring of water and the chirping of cicadas made the atmosphere even more peaceful. Dressed slowly guided him. Close your eyes and slowly radiate your mana like a thin mist. Then, feel that mana touch everything and reflect back. The drops of sweat rolling down Derek's cheek clearly showed his concentration. The thin stream of mana began to spread and touch the surrounding objects like a radar probe. He began to explain, what you are doing is the fundamental foundation of reconnaissance magic. At the second tier, you can locate targets and detect mana. By the third tier, you will see through all disguises. And when you reach the fourth tier, you can completely see through an opponent's heart. At the fifth tier, you have the ability to read minds and speak with the dead. Finally, when you touch the sixth tier, you will gain the power to foresee the future. Derek asked back, foresee the future? That is correct. I foresaw the future, which is why I came here to find you, because I am in desperate need of your help. What exactly is going to happen? He thought for a moment and answered, do you know the man named Valerian? He is the eldest son of the Duplain family. Before you officially reach adulthood, he will embark on the dark path of soul summoning. Because of this, you are compelled to end him. Derek was slightly confused by what he said. Why would he get involved in such dark arts? What exactly is he plotting? I am sorry, but I cannot reveal any more details to you. The future operates according to its own laws. If you blindly know everything, the days to come will become even more chaotic, unpredictable, and change in extremely troublesome directions. If there is one more thing I can share with you, it is that you are destined to die. Hearing this, Derek remained incredibly calm, as if nothing had happened. It seems you aren't very surprised. The male lead calmly replied. You said my destiny is to die, but you didn't say I would definitely die. Derek's answer made Dress smile. He stood up slowly and continued, spot on, and I don't want to see you lose your life at all. You are not allowed to die, so I will help you save yourself. To survive, you must become strong on your own. Finishing his sentence, he immediately cast some sort of magic pointing straight toward the sky. His hand reached toward the clouds obscuring the moonlight. His voice suddenly became strangely serious. You must be overwhelmingly, completely powerful. Instantly above the sky, a vast magic spread, clearing away the floating clouds. The light sparkling from it was enough to mesmerize anyone who saw it. And then the cave was once again bathed in the shimmering moonlight, a corner of it like a well connecting straight to heaven. Derek's gaze followed intently, seemingly understanding what he meant. Scene changed to the next morning. The streets were bustling and lively. A carriage slowly rolled down the street. When it stopped, Lady Denise and her maid stepped down from the carriage leisurely. All eyes around them were fixed on her with admiration. Denise said quietly to the coachman, I will walk from here, you stay and rest. Yes, my lady. As they walked down the street, Denise asked her maid, Bella, why is everyone staring at me? The maid bowed her head and replied, I was wondering that myself. Denise smiled and spoke, could it be because I'm too beautiful? Hearing this, the maid beside her was left speechless. You sleep without rest, your room is cluttered, you are lazy about bathing, and you spend all day lying around reading books. Your appearance is boring enough as it is, but I think you look even worse right now. Denise didn't get angry but teased her back. Oh my Bella, you're quite sharp-tongued lately, aren't you? I'm not joking at all. Aren't we going to hurry up, my lady? What if another family sends someone to whisk that Derek guy away first? To those words, the young lady remained as calm as ever. Don't worry, Bella. No matter how slow I am, I'm still faster than that crowd. The maid immediately jabbed. And yet you're always late for class. Denise seemed not to hear those words. I heard that Mercenary declined all invitations and went into hiding, right? Her eyes narrowed as she thought. He's not the type of person to turn down money, so why all of a sudden? Or has something appeared that is more valuable than money for someone capable of using high-level magic at such a young age? If there is anything more important than wealth, it can only be magic. Either he accidentally stumbled upon a supreme secret manual, or he took on some brilliant master as his mentor. If that's the case, he wouldn't have the mental capacity to go mercenary work anymore. That's why him declining the requests is only natural. But that same mercenary took the initiative to leave the Duplain mansion, didn't he? There is no place more ideal for magic training than the Duplain mansion. This means he found a spot even better than the Duplain house. Suddenly an idea flashed through her mind. Could it be? Suddenly the maid's voice brought her back to her senses. Lady Denise, we have arrived. Before the two of them was the familiar Beldern mercenary troop. When the door opened, Beldern quickly smiled. Welcome, valued guests. But then his eyes suddenly stalled. Oh my, this is truly surprising. Now even a noble lady has come all this way herself. We have no idea of Derek's whereabouts either. Just this morning, 3 groups have come looking for him already. I truly have no other information to offer you. Denise didn't care but asked a single question. The old mage dressed has been here before, right? Beldern replied awkwardly, that. Having gotten what she wanted, she smiled with satisfaction. Thank you very much for your answer. Saying this, she turned and left. Let's go, Bella. I need to cross-reference the schedule logs of the carriages. Yes, my lady. A while later, at the Belstein Commercial District's Coachman Association, the two were checking the schedule. My lady, how did you know Master Drest had been there? Denise said coldly. It's obvious, isn't it? That mercenary voluntarily left the mansion of a 5th-tier mage. Someone as obsessed with magic as him would never abandon a 5th-tier training ground. It proves that a 5th-tier sick character must have appeared to attract him. I just happened to hear rumors that a 6th-tier mage was on a journey to this Belstein region. I was just making a lucky guess. Who would have thought that old man would be so spectacularly accurate? Perhaps it is because I am too intelligent. Her maid watched her intently and replied, You never use your brain, so I have no idea. Oh my, Bella, you're acting so prickly today, aren't you? I'm just observing things objectively. Denise continued to admire herself. Oh, I'm exhausted. It's because I'm so talented. I only wish to be useless. Bella scoffed. Do you love hearing me talk back to you like this? What? Haven't you only ever seen my cute side until now? Hearing that, Bella could only shake her head. You really never take a word I say to heart. Anyway, even if we find him first, is it certain we can recruit him? I heard both Big Shots, Duplain, and Belmeard are hunting him down frantically. To those words, the young lady remained incredibly confident. Oh, my Bella, that is the easiest part. I have already mapped out a perfect battle plan. What is the plan? Bella asked curiously. Lady Denise leaned back, her smile widening even further. It's using the honey trap strategy. He is a young man in his prime. How could he possibly have the ability to resist a peerless beauty like me? The more the maid heard her talk, the gloomier her face became before warning her. But your competitor is Lady Alina. Denise was stunned and asked back, why are you pouring cold water on me like that? Bella, I am clearly prettier than her. Right, I'm prettier, right? Answer me. Bella sighed. This is the only time you actually listen to what I say. Suddenly the maid found something. Ah, found it. Both of them quickly read the information. This happened a week ago. A teenager in a cloak carrying a travel permit. Destination is the outskirts of Ramhull Hill, Laspa territory. Back to the cave, the two were still intensely focused on magic training. Suddenly, Drest sensed something and spoke softly. It seems someone has just tracked us down. They appear to be from the Veltus family. They look like your guests. Go out and welcome them. Outside the cave, the maid beside Denise said anxiously, Please, Lady Denise, I don't think we should go any deeper. How about we go back and report to the master, then bring more soldiers back later? Denise was determined to stay. I can't do that. If I do, then this credit won't count for me. Not to mention, if we mobilize troops and let other families catch wind of it, what then? That would be no different than making myself a stepping stone for others to snatch the credit. Suddenly the maid screamed, Oh, my lady, there's a monster over there. From the deep darkness, a pair of fiery red eyes appeared. Denise hurriedly called for her maid to back away. Bella, quickly stand behind me. Saying this, she silently calculated in her heart. Didn't they say this place had been cleaned out? I'm not very good at combat magic, but in this situation, I have to take a gamble. She reached her hand forward and began chanting in ancient tongues, and a flow of mana began to form. But then, as Derek's figure gradually emerged, Denise was stunned and stopped. He spoke slowly. What wind has brought a noble lady like you to such a desolate place, Lady Denise? She lowered her hand. Is it that mercenary? The three of them stood looking at each other in silence. The maid beside her sighed in relief. But then Denise smiled and thought, now is the time to make him mine. From the shadows of the cave, Derek slowly appeared before the two of them. Denise breathed a sigh of relief and asked, Is that you, Derek? He replied calmly, Yes, it is me. A gentle smile quickly appeared on her lips. Denise gracefully lifted her dress. Thank goodness, I came here because I really wanted to see you, Derek. I just wanted to have a conversation with you, even if it's only once. The maid beside her could only sigh at the sight. Derek remained silent, staring intently for a moment before replying softly. It is indeed a very interesting conversation. His answer left Denise speechless, and the maid nearly burst out laughing. Annoyance was clearly visible on Denise's face. Not giving up, she continued to step forward. Well, actually, I've lost count of how many times I've seen you in my dreams. I've heard you are an excellent mage and an incredibly brilliant teacher. So how should I put it? If I could be taught by you, Derek, I think I would be truly happy. Suddenly, Derek's voice grew more serious. Why are you using such a dramatic tone? Are you practicing for a play? Is it because the cave echoes so much? His retort made the maid cover her mouth, trembling with suppressed laughter. She tried not to make a sound, but eventually, she couldn't help but burst into laughter. Denise's eyes narrowed, thinking, so the innocent, lovely young lady trick doesn't work on him. Derek turned to leave, but she stopped him. Actually, I've been thinking a lot after watching the duel between Lady Alina and Lady Alent. As one of the Rosia trio, I feel like I'm the only one falling behind. I've been very worried that sooner or later, I'll be left behind. What if everyone else progresses while I stay stagnant? She struck a pose like a desperate beauty in distress, running up to tightly grasp Derek's hand. Please, I beg you, save me. A faint smile appeared on her lips as she thought her plan had succeeded perfectly. Oh my, we're so close. He must be able to feel my breath, right? His heart must be pounding, right? How could he possibly refuse now? But then Derek's hand swung up, tossing her aside quite brusquely. Denise's face froze in shock for a moment. Huh. Derek rubbed his wrist and replied, I don't think so. From what I can see, Lady Denise, you don't have the slightest interest in magic. Just a moment ago, you mistook me for a monster and tried to cast an ice spear, right? You're still clumsy, extremely clumsy. From the flow of mana to your casting speed, nothing was properly prepared. Your innate mana capacity is excellent, but it's completely blocked. That proves you rarely practice magic on a daily basis. The maid behind could only raise her hand, in agreement with that perfect assessment. Let me give you a piece of advice. In front of someone who is always serious about magic, don't use lies to talk about sincerity. Some might take it as an insult. I hope you understand what I mean. I don't know why you need me, but it is certainly not for the sake of magic. I don't accept helping those whose true motives I don't clearly know. Denise reached out to pull him back. Derek, wait a minute. The male lead continued to refuse. Go find someone more capable than a rustic mercenary like me. That would be more fitting for a lady of your noble status." Saying that, he turned his back and walked away, leaving behind a silent atmosphere. Denise watched his retreating back, her mind filled with confusing reflections. A while later, the two of them quietly left the cave. Denise pondered and reached a conclusion. "I have found his true identity. He must be impotent," the maid retorted. "No, that's not it. People are just a gentleman of integrity." Denise persisted. "But look at the reality. A great beauty like me used premium cosmetics and wore expensive perfume, yet he still refused. He must be impotent." Before she could finish, the maid interrupted. "Since when is there any logic like that? My lady, please calm down and think about sending a letter to the mansion." "Calm down? You're funny, Bella. What do I have to be calm about? Do I look that angry? Because of a trivial matter like this? No way, I'm not angry at all. Clearly, my lady is losing her mind." "Ah, yes, that's right, I'm sorry." She sighed gently and calmed down. "It's just that my fighting spirit has started to flare up." So Denise hurried outside the cave, determined to invite Derek back at all costs. The maid said worriedly, "Lady Denise, is this really okay? If I back down now, other families will snatch him away. I must capture him as soon as possible." The maid bowed slightly. "Don't push yourself too hard. I'm going to get to work now." "Bella, wait. I know you've had to endure a lot because I'm always selfish, but this is a small and extremely important task. I really hope you will help me this time. Tomorrow, when you come here, remember to bring volume 4 of The Duke's Ice Column Melts the Commoner Lady's Heart." The maid's face twisted in exhaustion. Clearly, she hadn't changed at all. The next morning, while Derek was meditating inside the cave, a sudden sound caught his attention. Denise was carrying a box containing many items. She placed a crate full of food and medicinal herbs in front of Derek, confusing him. "What is all this?" "Oh, nothing major. I can't do much for you, but I will take care of you so you can focus entirely on magic training, Derek." Even if you do this, nothing will change." Denise smiled and continued acting. "It's fine, just watching you is enough to make me feel like I'm making progress. Don't worry about me." Her eyes glinted with cunning as she thought. Once someone is a decent human being, they will surely be moved by someone who sacrifices this much. Just get comfortable, be grateful to me, and in the end, I will be the winner. Although he sensed something suspicious, Derek accepted the gift. "Then I will accept this kindness," she thought to herself. Hooked. He's fallen into the trap. "But I still won't be your master," Derek declared, leaving her stunned. "He just ate my food right in front of me and still refused? What kind of person is this?" The very next day, Denise arrived again with another gift in her hands. "Derek, today I brought food and magic stones for you." "Thank you, but I still won't be your master." The day after, Denise invited her head chef over to cook. "Good morning. My head chef says he's prepared a sumptuous feast for you." Derek thanked her, "but I don't agree." The following day, Denise carried a giant magic stone on her back. "Derek, come see this. Look, it's refined ore. I thought it would be helpful to you." "Just leave it there, but I won't accept." She went back to her tent and kicked the pole, breaking it in half. "That selfish, exploitative jerk. I've been this kind, so he should at least show some signs of being moved. Yet I see nothing." From far away, her maid ran over with a pile of luggage on her back. "Lady Denise, there's big trouble." "You mean there's something worse than this?" Denise growled. The maid hurried to say, "The head butler of the Duplain family is heading this way." She hurriedly scrambled to run away. "Bella, let's hide first." "What about the tent?" "Oh, I don't know. They'll think it's Derek's tent. Just hide already." From the other side of the forest, the head butler, along with the head maid and soldiers, followed behind with great solemnity. Denise hid behind a rock, thinking, "What is that? Are they going to war or what?" He walked straight into the cave and delivered the letter handwritten by the Duke. Derek carefully read it and replied softly, "To be the magic tutor for Lady Alina, that is truly a great honor." Denise, hiding behind, was shocked and fell backward upon hearing that. She screamed in extreme rage. After Derek finished reading the Duke's letter, the butler spoke slowly. "So, can you prepare to come with us immediately?" He thought it would be a firm agreement, but no, he gently declined. This decision left Denise feeling momentarily confused. Derek explained his refusal. "Only when I have finished my training, although I don't know myself when that will be." The butler made a new offer. "What if I increase the pay?" "I apologize. With my current strength, I cannot be of help to Lady Alina. I do not want to teach magic half-heartedly." Hearing that, Denise's eyes softened slightly. Perhaps she finally understood how serious Derek was about magic. The scene shifts back to the Duke of Duplain's mansion. Alina looked back at the maid, overjoyed. "Oh, really? You found where Derek is?" The maid stepped forward and replied softly. "Yes, Lady Alina. Late yesterday evening, the head butler went to see him personally." Alina exclaimed. Oh, you should have told me immediately. I intended to go ask him myself. Finishing her sentence, Elena quickly set off. Must go now. Gather the swiftest soldiers. The maid advised, but Lady Elena, the road is very treacherous. A radiant smile appeared on her lips as her answer escaped her mouth. This is to welcome my teacher. As a student, I must go in person. Returning to outside the cave, Denise and her maid were sitting by a campfire flickering in the dark night. She tightened her cloak slightly. The prolonged cold made Denise sniffle and catch a cold. She whispered to her maid, "Let's go back tomorrow morning, Bella." "Yes, I understand." Bella looked into the distance and spoke. "You gave up quite quickly, since you're so smart." Denise looked at her, her eyes seeming to sigh as well. "Hey, Bella, do you always think I'm an idiot?" "Oh, why would you think that, my lady? No, that could never be the case." "Why are you saying that?" Denise's eyes narrowed as she continued. "Before, I only had to be stubborn for everything to get done, but this time I don't even feel like being persistent anymore." "Why is that? Perhaps I just feel too tired." Bella looked up at the stars and replied, "That mercenary mage isn't the type to be swayed by noble status or money. He acts based on values that are much more important." Denise listened to it all, trying to understand what those words meant. She remembered Derek's previous answer. "With my current strength, I cannot be of help to Lady Elena. I do not want to teach magic half-heartedly." And then the images of Alent and Elena at the magic gathering also swirled in her mind. It clung to her as if trying to change something. Denise huddled herself, muttering, "Why? Why is everyone so sincere?" Inside the cave, stones suddenly hovered in midair. Derek was still sitting there, intently focusing on magic training, with no sign of distraction on his face. And then a sound made him pay attention. But the stones also fell to the ground, because the magic was interrupted. From far away, Denise slowly approached, speaking. "Sorry I disturbed your training." She asked calmly, "Can I sit next to you?" Derek was somewhat surprised by that attitude. "You seem different today. Is it because I'm talking casually?" "No, it's your eyes." Denise looked up, a smile appearing in an indescribable way. "Sorry for the trouble lately. From now on, I will stop." Derek also politely replied, "Thank you for everything. I hope you find a good teacher." Denise plopped onto the ground as if mocking herself. "Teacher, what teacher? I hate magic." Derek's eyes darted over, waiting for something. She continued to open up sincerely. "It's all politics and play acting. I tried to pull you to my side just because you were famous. But you are too arrogant. Since you are going to follow Elena anyway, I should just withdraw." Derek didn't care and asked, "Why do you hate magic?" Denise hesitated. Actually, I liked it a little back in the day. No, that's not really it. I just like being praised. Magic is just a tool. What I want is the applause of those around me. I threw myself into studying when people hailed me as a genius. I don't know how many magic books I read. Then one day I suddenly asked myself, what am I doing this for? Why study so much magic? Why become an archmage? What the hell am I doing? So I quit it all. That's all there is to it. Derek closed his eyes, giving his answer. Praise gets boring after you hear it enough. Denise turned to look at him and smiled. "Are you really listening to me? I thought I was just monologuing before I left." "Safe travels." She puffed out her cheeks in annoyance, but knew for sure he didn't care. And then Denise slowly stood up. "I'm truly jealous. Jealous of someone who has never doubted their own efforts like you. You will become a great archmage, right? Well, if we meet again, remember to say hello." Saying those words, she quietly left the cave and returned. The next morning, Elena and her soldiers reached the cave entrance. From high above, Denise watched the group approach. Her eyes held a lingering regret, deep and hard to explain. But then she still decisively left it behind and returned to the mansion. A while later, the scene shifts to Grand Duke Veltus's mansion. Bella was brushing Denise's hair and breaking the news. Elena was rejected. Yes, he is a very unpredictable person. Her eyes narrowed as she thought. Because his training isn't finished yet? But that doesn't mean a rejection, right? Bella continued, "Now you should stop worrying about this." Denise nodded. "That's right, he probably intends to live in the cave forever and turn into a bear like in those Eastern legends." "That's a bear turning into a human, my lady." "Whatever." Denise sulkily calculated. "He thinks he's the only one on this earth who knows how to use magic." When the two stepped before the living room door, Bella announced softly, "Oh, a guest just arrived to have a meal with you." "A guest? Who is it?" she asked curiously. The room door slowly opened. Denise bowed slightly as usual. "Father, good morning." But then, as her eyes opened, a familiar guest was sitting there. Derek was having a pleasant meal with Duke Veltus. He gently turned back to look at her with a calm gaze. In that moment, Denise froze. She couldn't understand what the hell was happening. This is